Welcome, everybody, to, oops, it's one of those mornings, to our August 30th work session. Thank you all for being here. We'll call the meeting to order. If you will join me, Nikki, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Absolutely, Mayor. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have an exciting presentation this morning. We have the swearing in of Matthew Delmore to Fire Lieutenant. So if everybody would please come forward. Anything you want to say first?
Good morning. Yes. Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. Jeff Parks, Fire Chief. I just want to say we had Lieutenant Brandon Young retired after 20 years with the department just last month, so that opened a lieutenant position for us. And we had about a year and a half ago, we had a promotional list that we did, and Matt scored well enough that Matthew Delmore is our next candidate for lieutenant. So I'll just tell you a little bit with Matt. He started September 1st of 2004 with the fire department as a firefighter paramedic, and he's been acting lieutenant for maybe 10 years now or so. Yeah. So he's got a little idea of what the job entails anyway. Before he accepted it. Yes. Yes. So with that, he's been on various committees. He helps with our exercise and physical fitness group that we have. Some of the equipment that we bought in the gyms that we have has been a responsibility of Matt getting them for us. So with that, we'll go ahead and, Mayor, if you'd like to do the swearing in. Sure.
Family and friends, you can come up. And are we taking pictures?
Michael's got it.
Michael's got it. Gotcha. All right. You can stand wherever you want.
Okay.
Perfectly fine. All around. All right, are you ready?
Yeah.
Raise your right hand. Okay, just repeat after me.
Okay.
Try not to go too fast.
All right.
I do solemnly swear,
I do solemnly swear,
in my newly appointed position of lieutenant,
in my newly appointed position as lieutenant,
to support and uphold the charter
to support and uphold the charter
and policies of the City of Dunedin Fire Department,
and policies of the City of Dunedin Fire Department,
at all times bear true to allegiance
at all times bear true to allegiance
to the mission, goals, and values
to the mission, goals, and values
set forth by the city,
set forth by the city,
and that I will fully and faithfully discharge
and that I will fully and faithfully discharge
my duties to the best of my ability
my duties to the best of my ability
for our personnel, the city, and its citizens.
for our personnel, the city, and our citizens.
Matthew, congratulations.
Thank you. Good.
I'm going to present this to you. I'm going to ask the commission to come down for a peck. Come on down.
Exercise.
With the whole family. You got a large support system.
Yeah,
Good for
very.
you.
Very grateful for that.
We're just going to squeeze in. Well, no. Here you go.
Tall guys in the back.
Tall guys in the back. All right.
How you do?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well done.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful and honored to be in this position and to be a part of the leadership of this great department. I've learned a lot from these guys back here. They've been like my second family, obviously. living with them and learning from them and working with them. Very grateful again and super excited to be here. Thank you to my family. You guys have been very supportive. And my wonderful girlfriend who's been supportive also and helped me get to where I am today. And to my kids, but they're just kids. So thank you again. Appreciate it very much.
And Matt, let me just tell you, we are so appreciative, A, that you accept the position, B, that you were doing it previous to accepting the full-on position, and thank you for representing the city with honor and dignity. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You guys don't have to stick around.
Yeah, you don't want to put your...
Oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you.
That's nice.
Sons look.
I know.
No attention. Yeah, no attention. No attention. That was great. Awesome.
Okay, welcome Cassandra. All right, we'll move on to citizen input. Anybody wishing to come forward and speak to any item that's not already on the agenda? I think for the most part, all I see is staff, so, okay. All right, so we have the consent agenda, and I know there's going to be any numerous of things getting pulled. So let me see if I can guess.
Okay.
All right, Code Enforcement Board. The coastal Jolly Trolley route.
Blanket road closures, maybe.
Yeah, that was the next one. Where is that? Why? Oh, yeah, blanket road closure. Sorry, I keep skipping over that for some reason.
Right after the other one, so.
And I think that's it. Is that
No, I
You have
have
one more?
one, unpredictable.
sediment?
No, sludge. I want the Safe Streets.
Oh, yeah,
item
Safe Streets, I should have.
Because I just want everybody to know about.
Know about
this
it, okay.
Extraordinary new thing.
All right, is there anything else from anybody?
Mayor 2F, just for comment.
2F,
Gas
oh, the
powered versus
gas-powered
electric.
motors. Okay.
I just knew that wasn't going to not be.
All right, so what we have is the consent agenda, the approval of the minutes of
Maybe
seven.
we should pull off the other two as well, just.
Stop it. We have the consent agenda. I want to make sure I have this right, so keep me in line down there, Michelle. 7:14 and 7:22, the minutes. The board and committee appointments for the Disability Advisory and the Public Safety Committee. The Casatina's revocable license agreement, the water quality and sediment monitoring, and the purchase of aluminum sulfate.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Franny and Vice Mayor Kynes, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okey doke. So, I think Jennifer, I'm going to turn to you on the Code Enforcement Board piece.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor. There are two nominations for reappointment, Mr. Jason Gillette and Mr. David Pauley. I'm going to ask that you move Mr. Pauley forward, and I have some questions for Mr. Gillette. I'm going to ask that you table that for the moment until I have a chance to speak with him.
Okey doke.
So I move Mr. Pauley moving forward on code enforcement.
Okay, so that's Commissioner Franny and Vice Mayor Kynes. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Alrighty, and then we have the Coastal Jolly Trolley. You wanting, I'm sure, given you're our liaison.
I didn't ask.
No, I did. Well, I did, but I'm just saying, does anybody want a full presentation, or are we just here for questions?
Short presentation, just brief, tell us what it's here
Sure.
and what we're doing, yeah.
Okay.
She came all this way.
Cassandra, you can sit right there at the staff table if you'd like, because I'm sure we have questions for you.
That was kind of whether she liked it or not.
Yeah,
I didn't think you
Right.
asked that in a way she had a choice, right, Cassandra?
Okay, Robert.
Certainly, Bob Ironsmith, Economic Development Director, here today to present on the coastal route. And as you mentioned, we have Cassandra here, also representative for PSTA. Just got a brief PowerPoint for you. Obviously, the Jolly Trolley has been very important to the city, and this has been in place for a number of years. It's been in place since 2010. It's been a great people mover. It's helped invigorate and revitalize our downtown, bringing in a steady stream of people. Service is 7 days a week at 1 hour intervals. I know there's some discussion relative to half-hour service. We certainly can talk about that too, and Cassandra is here. This is the coastal route, so it's Clearwater, Dunedin, Ozona, Carport Springs, moving people along our beautiful scenic route there. Our goal always with the Jolly Trolley is it's experiential. What we call is people take it for an experience. They love, enjoy riding the Jolly Trolley and going to different destinations on the coastal route. Funding for this is, as you can see, is $53,058. It comes from two sources in the city of Dunedin. It comes from our community redevelopment agency as well as the general fund. This agreement is for 3 years, and after the first year, it has a 6.4% increase to take in consideration, obviously, fuel and other things of that matter. This can be renewed for 1 2-year time period, so in essence, it's 3 years plus another 2 years. That concludes kind of the presentation. I'm here to answer any questions you might have, and of course, we have Representative Cassandra here from PSTA.
Cassandra, did you have anything you wanted to add before I open up for questions?
Hi.
Hi.
Good morning. It's really nice to see so many familiar faces. As you know, I'm leaving PSTA in just
Yeah,
a few
we're,
weeks, and so
you know, ready to throw things at you, but that's okay.
this may be my last public presentation for PSTA, and I couldn't be more thrilled that it's here in Dunedin. My parents actually live here.
Aw, so then we'll see you.
Yes. I am still Cassandra Borchers, the Chief Development Officer at Pinellas Signpost Transit Authority, and I have worked on this agreement for 10 years at the agency, and I've seen a lot of really great changes. Mayor, you probably know this agreement better than anyone in this room, and you and I have had plenty of conversations about how to make the service better. There is a lot of funding questions. I know you'll have some of those today, and I will be happy to answer anything that I can for you.
Thank you, Cassandra. As our liaison, Jeff, anything you want to ask or add?
Other than in my own preparation for this, I certainly knew that I'd be up against the history that the mayor has with this. So it's
That's okay.
I'd rather be schooled off the dais than on the dais. But no, Cassandra, sorry to see that you're leaving, and thank you for everything that you've done with the Jolly Trolley. Just to really talk about it, what was the impact of the COVID on the numbers? Where is that going in the future? Where do you see, have we bounced back completely on that?
We did see a steep decline early in the pandemic. The Jolly Trolley in general did have a great rebound, especially during the spring break of 2021. As we sort of went through the pandemic, saw ups and downs, we did see a little bit of a drop in the spring break season of 2022. But generally, we're seeing this route, among a few others that are more popular in our system, come back to full strength. And so we think 2023 will be right back up there and even beyond the ridership that we had in 2019.
And there is certainly conversation on our dais about 30-minute intervals. Hopefully that's occurring in other cities, municipalities. Where do you see that? Is that possible? If so, are there other avenues for revenue to assist with that other than the cities themselves?
I know that in the vision of PSTA and the service that we would like to provide for the residents of Pinellas County, we would like to have no service that is less than 30 minutes. Having 60-minute service or longer frequencies is very difficult for people to plan their trips and plan their lives. And so we would like to see across the entire system 15 to 30-minute service for all of our routes. As you know, Commissioner Gao, that does take a considerable amount of new funding. PSTA is currently at its millage cap. That is the primary source for our operating dollars. And if we were to make any changes to any single route, it would require us to eliminate other routes. We don't feel like that is a prudent move at this time. And if there were some opportunities for additional local funding that then could leverage state and federal dollars, we would be very open to that. We'll be starting our next community bus plan, which is the major update of our vision plan. And we hope that the people in the city of Dunedin, as well as the rest of Pinellas County, will come and talk to us about what they'd like to see for service, and then we can, again, revise our vision plan for the county.
And from my understanding, Safety Harbor used to be part of the route, but it's no longer.
At one time, there was a separate route that went to Safety Harbor. It was very short-lived, and it was Safety Harbor, Countryside, and then to the beach, but it was a separate route.
Okay. And apparently that wasn't successful. Is there any conversation? Is that a possibility in the future? Is that still on the table for either PSTA or Safety Harbor?
Again, it all comes down to funding, either the willingness of local municipalities to help with that service, or a new funding source countywide.
I would just hope that it would be PSTA that drives that conversation and continues to reach out to Safety Harbor and other municipalities and just, you need us, you need us, you need us, should be the drumbeat. But anyway, that's really all that I had. Thank you. Just any opportunity I have to talk public transit. Not that it's the end all be all, but it is a tool in the toolbox.
Commissioner, anything you wanted to ask?
You know, I was sort of wondering when you said that about it would take maybe a new initiative. Are there any plans that they're going to go for a transit tax again in the future that you know about?
We have been in conversations with the county administration about a transportation discussion for a new potential new sales tax referendum. We were slated to have that go to the ballot in 2020. Clearly, the pandemic put a wrench in those discussions. There is no plan at this time to go in 2022. But it does seem that it is not just public transportation that's having an issue being funded, it's all infrastructure across the county. And it is something that needs to be addressed if we want to continue to support our transportation needs and the lives of people who live here in Pinellas County. It's just not just buses, it's potholes.
Oh, yeah, it's multimodal, and I think maybe, everybody needs to understand that it is a multimodal project that we would be talking about if that comes forward again. Thank you.
Commissioner?
Yes, so what is the cost if we went to go from the 60-minute interval to the 30?
The current cost of the system overall is just under $1.5 million, and that gives you 60-minute service. So to double that, PSTA would need another 1.5.
So it literally is doubling the cost, okay.
Yes.
And the Safety Harbor issue, that doesn't help us, right? If it's a separate route?
No, really, it has no impact on this discussion,
Okay.
other than.
I mean, I love Safety Harbor, but that's on them.
Well, it helps.
Well-
The way it helps us is it connects our two communities.
Yes.
And it doesn't
In
help
theory,
the
but I have more to say about that. So
Yeah, that's
I don't
okay.
want to
That's okay. I was just curious on that link. And then when exactly are you doing the update to the PSTA plan? I mean, when is that a?
We will begin this spring with the community bus plan. We'll do some initial data collection for our ridership origin and destination surveys to understand how our system is working and changing. And then we'll work with the community to look at some improvements as well. So that will probably be maybe an 18-month process.
So as part of that, I assume, you guys will do a pretty massive statistical presentation on the usage of all the routes and the rationale of all the routes and
Well, it's not, we collect ridership
Yeah,
data
right.
daily, but this will be about how people are getting around the county.
Right, okay.
What will be our transfer affinities between routes, so we'll try to look
So
at
it's broader, really.
structure of the routes and see if there are more, if there's a way that we can give more people a one-seat ride
Right.
to where they're going, and improve the system that way. We'll also talk to both our riders and the general community about improvements that they'd like to see to the system and cost those improvements out. We'll have 3 different scenarios that we'll present to the Forward Pinellas, which is the Metropolitan Planning Organization, and prioritizes federal funding that comes to the area. So this will be the transit element of the long-range transportation plan. That is the way that we prioritize all transportation in the county. So this plan will look at 3 scenarios. One will be a no new revenue service, which may include some service cuts depending on the escalation of costs. We'll look at a step 1 or a low investment, looking at priority corridors that the MPO has prioritized, and some simple improvements, things that we can take as first steps. And then a vision plan for what the optimal service should be, optimal being within reason of cost and expected revenues from maybe a new service, a new sales.
One last question. Just, bigger picture, but what do you consider drives the system? I mean, is it like 75% current residents getting to work, or is it, how much percentage is tourism, how much percentage is just the everyday person trying to get around?
The vast majority of our ridership are people who are trying to live their lives and get to work. They're getting to school, they're getting to medical appointments, and for some people it's a lifeline. For some people it's a choice, or maybe even a casual user. We consider the tourist a casual user. And
Have you lived here long? Just saying. I'm joking with you.
No, but I asked the question. I mean, I used to be Director of Health and Human Services for Pinellas County for 4 years. And I know, like, all the social service, drivers know, like, transportation is huge in the solution of people's jobs and how they get to those jobs. I mean, we think of it as like this, I sit up here and think of it from a tourism, but it's a driver for people's lives every day. So I know there's a bigger, larger piece to that. So I think this will be a fascinating community process to kind of relook at.
it has a huge impact on our economy, and even to the benefit of tourists, because the people who ride it every day, especially to our tourist destinations, are the people who are serving our tourists. So we have.
Yes, that's a good point.
It is very important to our overall economy. If that service shut down, it would be like shutting off the lights, or if housekeeping couldn't come to the hotels and nobody could get towels, right? Don't think about that as part of the utility that you have for the tourism industry and other industries across Pinellas County.
Yeah, and it's such, I think sometimes it gets missed, how important a piece it is to our economy. So, thank you.
Commissioner?
Cassandra, nice seeing you again. Just a general question, and just on the Jolly Trolley section of this, from a transportation side, can you just talk a little bit about the capacity and a little bit about the ridership? Perhaps, it's over a period of time during the day. Are there any generalities that you can give to us?
PSTA is a little bit unusual in the national scheme of what is a peak service and what is off-peak. We generally have a strong midday service, and that's because of both shift work and tourism. And so we don't necessarily find that we have a capacity issue on this particular route, but we do have a very steady ridership across the course of the day. We do see a peak in the year during the spring break time. Ridership can be anywhere from 7,000 people getting on per month to 10,000 a month, depending on what time of the year it is.
So, for example, I don't ride it very often. In fact, I haven't ridden it in over 2 years now again. But, pardon?
I said we should get you on there. I think you have a lifetime partnership.
Exactly.
I think most of us do.
I think, yeah, does mine still work?
Yeah. So I have my bike and I'm whatever, but so nevertheless, the question I was just trying to get some kind of an idea of how full are the trolleys now. So they have a capacity of a number, and generally, what are they? How?
The Jolly trolleys are a little bit smaller than the PSTA trolleys. They're 29 feet, seated probably about 30 people. You can probably fit another 10 to 15 comfortably standing in certain areas. You wouldn't want to go all the way from Tarpon Springs down to the beach standing. I don't think that people are. There have been times when there are 2 to 5 people on the bus, and other times when we have every seat full. Sometimes it depends on the place in the route. Certainly at the end of the route, everybody's gotten off, so there's no one on the bus at the end of the route, and it means we've done our job because everybody's gotten off. And then sometimes in the middle of the route. I would say the most crowded section of the route is from Dunedin to Clearwater Beach. So in that section, that's where we have the most ridership. In fact, the service begins in Dunedin and then goes down to the beach and then goes up to Tarpon Springs. And so that section, we do have to serve a little bit more. We did put a third vehicle on the route in order to allow it to be on time. So that was a few years ago. We went from 2 vehicles to 3 vehicles. That also gives us extra capacity during the spring break to maintain the service at the right intervals.
Thank you for bringing it up, because I was going to ask that question, how many vehicles are on the service now? I know you keep really good records. I know PSTA does, and I'm sure that Jolly Trolley does as well in relationship to PSTA. So you probably have this detailed information if anybody did want to look at it from the ridership.
We do have different technologies on the PSTA buses, but we're trying to get Jolly Trolley to have those same technologies. One of those is automatic passenger counters. PSTA is allowed to report those EPC data points, part of our National Transit Database report, which then turns into federal dollars back to the region. But Jolly Trolley is using a slightly different system, so they use their fare boxes to collect the data and rely on their operators to ensure that every rider is covered.
Thank you.
Okay, so I did, obviously, I have something to say. The Safety Harbor line just was not successful. And I also think there was a lot going on with the Safety Harbor merchants and chamber and city on who was going to pay, and they had a whole different approach to it than we did. And, there was a lot of conversation at the time. I'm trying to be careful in how I say this because I don't want to condemn anybody, but there was a lot of conversation at the time in Safety Harbor about how is this benefiting us when people are leaving our city to go to Dunedin, because they were counting which direction
Sounds great to me.
they were going, and
They're doing that by car now.
yada, yada, yada. So, I mean, there was a lot, and I think we did a nice little test route. I think in the end, the big conversation with Safety Harbor, and I used to talk to Doug Beavis about this when he was mayor of Oldsmar, is, to me, rather than trying to make that really long connect, to me, connecting, Safety Harbor, East Lake, and Oldsmar as a circle might be something that they should start with. Because, really, that's what we did. We just sort of connected the people that are close to us. We're at an advantage because we're on a tourist line, let's just face it. Anyway, that's enough about Safety Harbor.
I might add too
Sure.
that the coastal route is a very reliable route. It starts very early in the morning and goes very late at night. Reliability is a key to driving ridership. And we say the last trip of the night may not be your most productive, but it's what people, it allows people to feel comfortable taking the second to last trip or the third to last trip because they know there's one more in case they miss it. And so if you eliminate the ends because to say they're not productive, you start to eliminate your ridership. The service in Safety Harbor was a middle of the day service. It was very narrowly defined. And I think that happens a lot around here where we go halfway and we wonder why it doesn't work. The coastal route is an indication of when you go all in, things do work.
Well said.
Regarding your plan that you talked about, even though that has, well, it will have something to do with the trolley, but you said 18 months. I mean, my hope personally, and I would venture to say probably the entire commission's hope, is that whatever surtax they go for, it'll be done in 2024, and we're in 2022. And you're talking about spring of 23 and then 18 months. That doesn't get us on the ballot for 24. So any thoughts on that?
We believe that we will have the information if the county decides to go forward. We have that now. It would just be refreshing it based on current cost estimates.
Gotcha. Okay. The numbers that you gave us, we used to get those numbers by destination, and I know that the trolley has still not, bought into the PSTA model of equipment, which I'm surprised. I mean, that question has been put out there for, I don't know, a long time. So, are you able to get us that information, the numbers by destination?
We have found that their APCs are not as accurate as we'd like them to be. They have about 60% accuracy, so we can definitely take a look into if we could do a sampling. But we feel like the vast majority of people are traveling either to or from Dunedin.
Well, that's what, when we used to do it, or when it was happening, and it was your folks getting on there and counting, I remember. That's what we saw. But I do think it's information that we should have at least once a year. And if you wanted, I mean, I'd like to see it twice a year, kind of at the busiest time and then the non-busiest time. But I'll take the busiest time of the year.
I will say that being out during our spring break service, we had staff members in Clearwater Beach to make sure that people who were getting on the coastal got on the right route. There were lots of
Confusion
that were serving the beach, and they had different destinations. And getting on the right vehicle, especially when it comes once an hour, was pretty critical. And what I found is that most of the people that I spoke to were headed back to work.
So do you think there's a way we can get at least once a year?
I think we can give you a rough idea of sampling.
Because it's not just us. I mean, you want to see I think the other cities are going to want to see, of course, what they do with that information. We hope they don't back out of our agreement, but, I think once a year we should get that. So if you could work on that. Bob, you'll follow up, I'm sure.
Yep, sure.
Okay.
We have called, by the way. We have made those calls.
Sure. Not that you're the person to decide this, but the question about, who's writing and everything. I say this to Whit every chance I get, and every time he's updating a plan, I say it, and that is we have to focus more on tourism. Not that that should be the end-all to be-all. I don't want to take away from the job factor, but we can't keep looking at our system on a whole like the system of Cleveland or the system of Milwaukee, because that is not the environment we live in. And when you have, just looking at Visit St. Pete Clearwater numbers, when you have 5 million people deplaning to come here and 90% of them or 80% of them getting a car, that tells you something. We only have 1 million people that live here. So we need to get those people on service. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but as you're working on your plan, please add that input so I don't have to make an extra trip to say it for the 50th time. And then I have another request, 2 requests for your plan, or actually one of them for now. For your plan, again, our old plan, green light, that's no longer, we had at least seasonal transit to Honeymoon Island, the #1 park in the state. I don't want that to get lost in the mix, because I think that needs to happen. In addition, I also think that 30-minute service, a good way to try to start it, is the same way we've done the trolley all along, baby steps. I think 30-minute service during season is absolutely something we should try to figure out. And obviously, I don't want to wait to see if there's a referendum. So if you can take that information back to your board, look at what the cost of that would be. 30-minute service during season, whatever that's deemed appropriate. I won't determine what that is. 3 months I'd be happy with. But I absolutely think that during season, even with the extra vehicle that we get, I've seen those full trolleys. I've seen people waiting. It's still happening, is my point. The problem that we were trying to solve is still happening. And I'm sure my colleagues will support that request. Okay, so, and one final thing I did want to just say, and I know there was a question, probably from you. Was it from you? Why is Clearwater paying less?
It was from me.
Okay.
I'll own that.
Okay, and it's a good question because it is sort of history and it was a long time ago, but I will just say that, Downtown Clearwater Development Board is a entity amongst itself, and in our negotiations of starting this, they were all about how does it benefit us. They were not really excited about participating in the project. In addition, the city of Clearwater pays, I don't know, well now it's probably $300,000 or $400,000 they're paying for the beach. At the time, I think it was $200,000 and some for the beach into the downtown. And so we felt as a group, as we were working throughout all those cities and trying to get how many governments to agree to something, that it was okay for another arm of Clearwater to pay a little bit less because they were paying so much more on the other side. And we just thought, okay, we don't want the whole thing to blow up.
Right. Well, that makes sense.
So, I mean, I'm just being honest. That's how we approached it. Negotiation, nobody ever gets everything they want. So that's kind of how we approached it. And everybody sort of agreed. And we did think, in all honesty, that maybe they'd up their ante once they saw it was successful. But nobody's had the guts to go back and ask. Because, they are an entity on their own.
If we're asking for 30-minute service, and we're going
yeah.
to need more money,
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, it isn't
Yeah,
totally,
yeah.
they're gonna have, I mean, once this, if there is increased service, everybody's gonna probably have to. I mean, eventually, the idea is that, and I said this from the beginning, is PSK is gonna pay all of it. Because, and I say it here because we talk about transportation things here as well. Dunedin is worried about transportation in its own community. And how do we deal with parking and cars coming down and everything else. But I always say we have a transit agency that's in charge of transportation. We don't need to be doing that. We need to get them to do it, and we need to help them lobby to get the funding to be able to do it. Mm-hmm. So we are here to support, for sure.
You are correct in that the city of Clearwater itself does pay for the North Beach route, the South Beach, and the South Beach route. They also support a 2-month service for additional service during spring break from downtown to the beach. In total, they pay just over $400,000 a year with those 2 agreements that we have with them. In addition, they assisted us with the marina stop
Right.
And they assisted us, more importantly, with the Clearwater Beach Transit Center on the north side of the Causeway Boulevard. And that is the way that we were able to extend the Jolly Trolley coastal route to have a one-seat ride to the beach. Prior to that and that investment by the city of Clearwater, we had the coastal route stop in downtown.
Well, and it stopped at Island Way. And then you'd have to get off of that and get onto another one, so, yeah.
But thank you, because that tells, it's not just what we were given, just because there's a greater story.
There
So
is.
I appreciate that.
And I do go see the Downtown Development Board annually to make sure that they put this in their budget. It is the largest investment in any, what they call events, in the downtown. They do have a number of weekend events that are asking for $3,000, $5,000, $10,000. This is their biggest investment in anything in their budget.
Thank you.
It's good to know. All right, anybody else? Anybody from the public wish to come forward and speak to this item? Okay, can I have a motion to approve the updated funding agreement with the Jolly Trolley?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Gao and Vice Mayor Kynes. Any final comments?
No.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. It's a great thing to have in our city. We're so sorry to see you leave.
Absolutely.
Hopefully you'll still be able to help from afar.
You have my number.
We do. We all do.
How quickly she'll change that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have both your numbers. I never know which one to call. Which one is that? All right, thank you very much, Cassandra. Appreciate it. See you later. FDOT.
Oh, okay, very good.
All right, now we'll move on to the blanket road closure list. As you know, we've all gotten an email from Alan with some concerns. Jennifer, you wanted to, you had a plan for us for this morning. You want to share that, please?
We do have a plan, and Vince can give you an overview of the road closure list. It's not quite as many closures and events as Mr. McHale has stated in his email to all of you. That said, we need to address some of his concerns. And for the record, Vince did reach out to him ahead of time, and he was on vacation, and the two of them did not make that connection. And so, Vince did try. We've been discussing this for a while about reaching out to Mr. McHale. We did work, the issue is at the SAS that when we close the road up to Milwaukee, that they don't have access to their parking for events during the weekend. The list of events that we have, as I said, is not quite as many as Mr. McHale had alluded to. Last year, when you all looked at the special event or the blanket road closure list, you directed staff to reach out to the Boy Scouts to see if we could get some sort of a cross-access easement, which we did. We talked to the leadership at the Boy Scout Troop 10, I think it is, and they weren't that interested in allowing any sort of cross-access. And we weren't that interested in pressing it, to be honest with you. We again can reach out to them and talk to them a little bit about any sort of access during those events. I think it's 4 that Mr. McHale had indicated that the SAS, access to the SAS is cut off. In conversations that I had with Vince about this specific issue, Vince is requesting that we actually approve the blanket road closure list through December, and then we can work with the SAS. And the reason for that is that we really do need for those events to have some sort of certainty as far as their promoters and our own staff getting the folks on board that they need for those particular events, the vendors, if you will. And so it doesn't mean that we're not going to bring it back to you earlier, but we need those events approved through December.
Because
And
of
so-
their planning.
Right, exactly. And then we will reach out to SAS and work out a plan with them as well, if necessary. I mean, it's, you know, these are larger scale events that we're having and bringing a lot of people to downtown.
Okay, so one of the things that, you know, at some point, we started extending these events from Loudon to Milwaukee. And it's pretty easy to see on some of them why we did that. Because, let's face it, we have a downtown East End plan that we're trying to promote, right? We have a whole plan, it's this big, and we have some East End businesses. So I didn't have a chance to talk to Alan at all, but since we received his email yesterday, but I will for sure. I know none of us want to hurt his business and what they're doing, but like downtown trick-or-treating, I would think they'd want to participate in that and not have an event that night. Or, you know, because I mean, I can see a bunch of people in their Scottish garb out there handing out candy. I think the reason trick-or-treating goes up that far now, which it didn't, it used to go to Highland at one point. I mean, I remember that. I think it's because they park at Gateway, but they're not gonna, that's not gonna happen forever. So again, as we're trying to promote the East End, I get both pieces of it. I don't know that it has to go up that far, but I just make those comments. The other thing, Wines the Blues, I think the reason it started going up that far is because they have a sponsor in Caledonia. And, you know, again, an East End merchant who wants to be a part of it.
And an additional stage up.
Right, and do we say yes? Do we say no? I mean, if we invested all of this money in the East End plan, so it's got to work for everybody. So I don't want to take away from one to give to another, so we've got to find that balance. I really am confident in you that you can work out something with the Boy Scouts. I think that's the answer. You know, and it's just a coordination effort. And it's a coordination, I mean, Alan's email clearly stated that I guess whoever was managing parking or event people over there weren't letting people in on the one, you know, it's all of those pieces that have to work together.
Sync.
Yeah, and guess what? That's what happens when you grow. You know, we've got these growing pains, and none of us are trying to do anything to hurt anybody. You know, the Arts and Crafts Festival does stop at Loudon, so that's not, you know, gonna hurt them, hopefully. Anyway, anybody else have questions or concerns about allowing our staff to do what they need to do? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it, as we've done special events, any one business or any one entity, you know, this is always, you know, it's an issue that's been true of many, many people who have had, you know, which have created give and take situations for the good of the community. So I agree, we don't want to hurt the Scottish American group, but I felt confident too. I feel very confident that we can work something out that's you know, with the Boy Scouts. I'm very hopeful about that. But that being said, I mean, does it make sense to approve all the road closures now except for that small piece and kind of leave that open? That we need to fill that gap, that way all the promoters for the next year can go forth and know that they have their dates, except this little slice that's got to be figured out.
Well, ideally, that would be the best way to do it. But if we wanted to work with Alan and the Scottish American Club, you know, we could take a pause too and bring a second round back in December, because we do have events starting again in January. So there, and right now between now and December, there are 3 events: Halloween trick-or-treating, Wines the Blues,
And Old Fashioned Christmas.
and Old Fashioned Christmas. in the first, between now and the end of December.
And if I may add, so that's December. And then in January, Arts and Crafts does not go up to Milwaukee, and that's the 7th. So really what we're looking at
It's
is,
taking us to February. Yeah.
right, Mardi Gras. But I know that DDMA also needs certainty because they're
Well, that's what I mean.
booking sponsors and, you know, that type of a thing.
They want to know
So-
their date's set and they can
Right.
not worry about some, yeah.
Right. So I think actually, if depending on what the commission wants to do today, we would need to bring something back sooner than that, and we'll reach out to the Boy Scouts today and get a meeting.
Jennifer, I can ask, if you reach out to the Boy Scouts and they say yes, what does that yes mean? And how formal does that get? How long would that take to make that yes something formal? Do we,
Yeah.
can we say, can we see this at the next workshop? Or that's too soon?
Great question.
I think that's too soon,
Okay.
just because they say yes, and I think that they'd have to call a meeting of their board, and we formalize whatever agreement that is. There's going to be indemnification, there's going to be all those sorts of things, and so, and I would need to work that out with them as well. So I think that I can commit to you know, working through this with all haste, but I can't give you a time specifically when I can bring it back, Commissioner.
Yeah, okay, well,
I mean, I'm okay approving it through the end of the year. I think you're going to come back. I mean, we're in what, okay, September 1st, let's say. I can only imagine this is going to come back to us at sometime in October,
Do you think that would work, Jennifer?
I think that would work, yeah.
you know? And which for a February, I mean, I certainly think we can verbally tell DDMA that the date is fine on Mardi Gras. It's not the date that's the problem, it's
Right,
the
so they know
location of
they
the
can move forward.
closure that we're still wrestling with. So they, you know,
Yeah.
yeah. My only comment was there used to be very strong ties between the First Presbyterian Church and the Boy Scout group. I don't know if that's still true.
There's
Yeah,
still a-
yeah.
And if it's still true, I mean,
there's
I
still
just,
a-
we need to, you know, talk to all people, you know, involved and make sure we kind of, because I don't know what the issue is, and maybe there's an issue I'm just blind to, but it seems like we should be able to work something out.
Well, I think that when we approached them, it was regarding a formal cross-access easement. And now
so
we're
they
looking
were
at
worried
something
about
different, like once or twice a year.
Yeah, okay.
You know, so, and, you know, that was a resounding negative in the cross-access easement. And so, like I said, I mean, I think that if we back off a little bit and say it's once or twice a year, or even once a year, and work with the SAS on their events, you know, participate in the event, or don't book your event for that weekend, you know. But, you know, I think that it's worth the effort for sure. And we can report back to you. I think we should be successful. I know that the church provides and I don't know the details specifically about that relationship, but I know that they provide a meeting place for the group, and I don't know if the leadership of that troop is embedded in the church, the formal leadership. And so, you know, we just need to find these things out, and I'll sit down with them myself.
That's excellent. So you just want us to go through December, and you're going to bring this back pretty quick. Is that what
Yes.
we're going for?
Yeah.
I had a couple of questions, and Jennifer, and that's when we throw out all these closures, you know, in the future, I wondered if it might be helpful. Some of them will follow the same pattern, and some of them are different. If we could have a little diagram, I mean, it really helps to sort of clarify that the actual area that we're talking about, you know?
We do have
Yeah.
maps for most of our events that we use when we meet, when we have our production meetings with the sheriff and
So
streets.
that's
And
really easy to attach, throw it in there, right? Right? And,
Yeah, because it is hard to like, okay, like,
Yeah, yeah.
here to here.
We all do that mental
I'm trying to
exercise.
figure it out, and it's like,
It is true.
so, Jory, I'm sure you're probably, now, I was a little interested in that the Railroad Avenue West, it's going to be between Scotland and Maine, I suppose, for the closing for the History Museum, their 50+2 anniversary. It says Railroad Avenue West from Maine to Scotland.
Correct.
So did they broaden that? I mean, because I thought it was more in the space of the downtown market we've been having this summer, the summer downtown market.
Which it also includes the Blur parking lot. So for pedestrian walking on Honey, we'll have to close it
Okay.
to Scotland.
Okay, just a quick question.
safety.
And then I was really interested that they're going to only 5 days for the Dunedin Express. I thought that, the Dunedin Express has been just a real, people love it for their children. I mean, I was just curious.
Right, you may have to talk to Vinny.
Right. I'm asking the wrong person. You got it.
I know, but could I tag on to that? So are they not going to the church anymore?
No.
Which we have to talk to Vinny, because
Yeah.
I saw how that street, I think it was San Mateo, now maybe they know something I don't, which is, could be probable. But what I saw over the years that they did it was people were starting to decorate, they got used to the route. They were like, it was cool.
Yeah.
And so, and I know pandemic changed them, but I for one, wish they'd go back to how they did it, because I thought it was pretty cool.
And it was almost 2 weeks, wasn't it?
It was a couple
And,
weeks, maybe
I mean,
volunteer, I don't
Maybe a
know.
couple of weeks, but it was a very unusual, unique
And it was
event.
There is an
So-
expense with the Jolly Trolley, the multiple days, and hiring the Jolly Trolley for the numerous hours that they need. So that could be a reason
get
why
that,
they
but
brought
it's
it down
the-
to.
Dunedin Express, and there's no express. So, anyway,
What are all the elves gonna do?
So-
I mean, they're out of.
anyway,
time.
that's,
I'm teasing. Yeah, so we're, I was just curious.
I'm calling Vinny though, because I thought about that too, Deborah, thank you.
Good.
Yes, sir.
So I'm still waiting to make my comment about.
I'm sorry.
No problem. When I spoke with the city manager, we discussed it, and I said that I really wanted to pull this because this is about the downtown, and this is the closing of the downtown. It's been an issue for a long time. Every time we close the downtown, somebody seems to not be happy about that for whatever reason. Could be a church, could be someone that gets cut off or whatever. So I thought it was important that we go through. And we've stated this before from up here, that we would like to go through the entire list and see the list all together. So I thought it'd be good that we did that and not just do it in consent. So that's why I wanted it brought out. And I think we ought to go through it in relationship to the closing of the downtown. So for example, we had three new events. 2 of them really don't affect anything. Only 1 does. I asked for that before I saw the letter. And there was a letter sent to us from the Scottish Association folks, and that did affect them. So we need to kind of catch those things as we're going through it, and see what we're doing. I think to the downtown. As you pointed out, it's small. It's not big, but we ought to go through it. I think because it does affect the downtown, and we'll catch things like this as it relates to the Boy Scouts. My comment after I read the issue was really just to ask, can you guys figure this out? Can you work this out somehow? Whether this is you trade parking spots with somebody someplace and lets everybody park over there, and then have a reserve spot for them, so whatever it was. But that's a great solution for that one thing. We still have all those events occurring downtown. For the closure. I thought it was just good. We had asked before to have it all together and then make the presentation to us, just so we see what it is. So I think it's good that we take it off consent and put it out in the open and just go through it, just let everybody see it. And I think we ought to, and I'm not for coming, I think we should be prepared to agree to it if we do, or if we don't, we don't, and to catch the ones that are issues now so that the folks can do some planning. I mean, they need to know that they're going to get that. Certainly the springtime folks, they need to know that now. So that's my opinion.
Okay, so Jennifer, you're asking us to approve this through December?
Yes.
And you'll come back
Which
by
literally takes
October.
us to February,
Right,
in essence.
it does. And we'll come back to you, I'm going to sort of come back to you before December with the remainder of it, because, specifically, for Mardi Gras, DDMA needs some,
Right.
And again,
Solid ground
you
to stand
said
on.
that They're gonna, they can know, I mean.
The date is the
The
date.
date,
Right.
we're not, yeah, it's not about the date.
right.
Okay.
But is there, I was trying, is there, what one new one is there that affects the,
There were three new.
but what was the one that you,
The-
what's
I'm
the,
sorry, what, I didn't hear the
is it
question.
just the Dunedin Museum one, right? The 50th anniversary that affects the new, anything new?
One was the Day of the Dead, and the other two were the museum 50th anniversary.
Right.
And then the Dunedin Express, which
Day
are
of the Dead is the
are
road
small,
closure itself.
right?
Yeah, because the Day of the Dead's
Day of the
existed
Dead.
for a long time, it's
Well,
just now it's gotten bigger and so,
The
yeah.
the Day of the Dead didn't have a formal road closure, but they did close the road to bring their puppets up and down from Douglas to Broadway and back, and the sheriffs had to come and close the road for that time frame. So we just felt it was much safer.
Yeah, but it is, because when they've done it before, like, I think they informally
Yes.
closed, so it's, yeah, it's.
We had the sheriffs out there
Really new.
helping us, but we felt it was safer to close it.
Right, and the 50th, of course, is a one-time deal, because I do want to be sensitive to the fact of when we add.
And that just goes to Highland from
And
Broadway
Juneteenth
to...
is just a piece of
And it's
Virginia.
50 plus 2.
Yeah, so there's 30 total, 18 do impact downtown. 4 of them go up to Milwaukee, and then one is on Pinehurst to Michigan for the high school march. We also have the Marina Plaza that closes for the holiday boat parade. The Hog Hustle is just a early morning event. It's done by 9:30, several streets throughout Dunedin, but it basically starts at the Hale Center at the trail, and then the Causeway closes twice for the Rotary Triathlon and the Kiwanis Midnight Run.
On the subject of Dia de los Muertos, I'll say that I think it's preferable to close the road,
Yeah.
because it's
For
hard for the
safety.
sheriffs, right, to
For
open it back
safety.
up again.
Yeah, at some point, because I've been there, I mean, like, it ends up kind of informally
Right.
shutting down,
Right.
but it's not, that's not a safe way to do it.
And then the sheriffs need to open the road, and people still anticipate that it's closed, and they're still
Yeah.
walking across, and
Yeah.
so we definitely need to close it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could I make a recommendation
Sure.
Yes.
to take the road closures on Main Street that specifically impact the downtown area that we're discussing, but approve the rest of the road closures that are not impacting Main Street, like the Rotary Triathlon on the Causeway, the Kiwanis Midnight Run that's on the Causeway.
That makes sense, yeah.
Well, it does,
Suncoast
except how do you put that
Brotherhood.
into a motion?
We-
I mean, it's so much simpler just to say through the end of December,
The events that go
and
from...
verbally say the dates are fine.
But we have done motions way more complicated
I'm just
than that.
saying.
I was just saying what she said in the motion.
Right, I think it makes sense, Mayor, the events through the end of December, and all events that don't affect
Don't
Main Street.
affect Main Street.
Right.
Okay. Before anybody makes that motion, I did have one other thing.
She's,
I know there's been talk, I know the task force is going to talk about it, I know the CRA's got a subcommittee, I know the Chamber's got a subcommittee on special events, I know we've been talking about the Downtown Art Festival and how many do we need. I just want to put this thing out there as y'all are talking. I don't have I'm not going to get into the weeds. But I will tell you, it bothers me that we have this 2-day Downtown Art Festival in November, the same day as the Celtic Festival. It bothers me because I would like the focus to be on the Celtic Festival. So if you were gonna get rid of one, I'm just putting it out there, there's a reason for that particular one. Just saying. I would like the Celtic Festival.
how long has that been in conflict? Has that been
A
typical?
long time.
That's what I thought.
No, it's been in conflict for a long time. But you also have two weekends back to back with major events. During holiday time, during people trying to do Christmas shopping, So again, I'm not getting into the weeds. I'm just pointing something really obvious out to me.
And at the same time, on the weekend before, Wines of Blues is November 12th. We have a large Suncoast Animal League event in Highlander Park the same weekend as well.
Yeah, so I just, again, for everybody to consider. I'm not saying we should or shouldn't. All right, so can I have a motion to approve this list through December, as well as any closures that do not affect Main Street?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that is Commissioner Franny and Vice Mayor Kynes. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Good suggestion, Jory.
Yeah, very good, Joy.
Okay, we have, thank you guys. We have the purchase of 4 gas-powered mowers for Parks Division at a cost of $59,000 and change. Jeff, you wanted that pulled.
I
You
did
don't want a
ju-
whole presentation, do you?
No, just a comment, and just, thank you for keeping track of all this, because I'm, what's pulled and what isn't pulled. No, I just wanted to say thank you to staff, for us not having to ask for it. It's already being looked at, and as far as, also recognizing the fact that as we transition from cleaner, more renewable resources, it's not an automatic, right? We're still in that stage of where are we with technology, and it might be good for one product, it might not be good for another. And so this is, I think it's the right decision here to stay with the gas. I just wanted to say thank you for staff for looking at it. The only comments really would have been is, as there were some objections within the staff reporting on why we wouldn't, and it would have been nice if those objections would have been a little more data-driven. You know, if we're worried about the number of, the length of time you can run an electric mower. Certainly we want to keep those mowers running all day, so it's a matter of how many batteries would it take. Not do we have to take a mower offline during the day and charge it, but how many batteries would it take to keep it going, and what's the cost of that, and all that. And also maybe take into consideration as we transition into electric trucks, they're going to have an outlet component, so we can actually charge during the day, or maybe when we're going from one place to another. But the idea that you are automatically considering alternatives, thank you all very much. Greatly appreciated.
Okay, anybody else?
No, I think that was well said.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Commissioner Gao and Vice Mayor Kynes, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0. All right, and then finally, the Safe Streets
Thank
for
you.
All. Thank you,
Thanks, Vince.
Vince.
Thank you, Vince.
Yeah, I asked to pull this actually because I think it's such a fascinating project, and it's now where the memorandum of understanding is actually for the planning, but it has been, we have received letters from the Edgewater Drive Advisory, from TD Ballpark and Curtis Fundamental. And I just wanted to hear a little bit about it, and I wanted just to sort of put it out there so that a lot of people more in that south side area really knew that this was coming, and about this agreement, memorandum of understanding.
Yeah, for sure. Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. It's my pleasure to be here. George Kinney, along with Francis Leong Sharp. Francis has actually been the point person on this, so I'm not going to try and steal too much of her thunder, but I kind of want to lead you up to how we got here, if I could just have a second. So you may recall at the start of our budget process, our department submitted a business plan initiative to talk about some improvements to Beltrees, particularly between Patricia and Edgewater Drive. And part of the rationale for that was all those drivers down there. There's pedestrian and vehicle drivers down there, like the ballpark, like Curtis Fundamental. The Pinellas Trail is very active there.
The linear park.
Absolutely. So there was a lot of things happening. And at the same time, through our traffic committee meetings, we were getting complaints about speed, access issues, that kind of thing. So it just seemed like a natural progression to look at this through now our newly adopted multimodal transportation plan as an initiative going forward. And we put $45,000 in that BPI, and it's still in. As luck would have it, we ended up finding out that the county was pursuing some Safe Street grant opportunities, which is what is before you today. And the timing on that grant works really well. Number one, it allows us to maximize our ask up to $150,000 with a 20% match. So even with that 45, the most I would use is $30,000. So we're automatically giving 15 right back to the general fund. And we get that much more bang for our buck, if you will. The timing on it is absolutely perfect. The county will submit the grant application on our behalf in September with the awards to be announced in December, with a consultant potentially selected in February, and the plan completion in by the middle of next year. So it really works out absolutely perfectly. It's a great opportunity for us to kind of look at that street section and really think about multimodal improvements, safety improvements, and really start to connect some of those pedestrian drivers down there. So we're very excited about it because it's planning, and as planning people, that's the kind of stuff that we love. But we think it's a really great opportunity. The county's been fabulous. They will select a consultant on our behalf with our input, but we've had a really good working relationship with them to this point. And I would just add, Francis, to add anything that you think might be good to add.
I guess just out of people's curiosity, that this grant application of the program itself stems from the infrastructure bill that was passed by our federal government. And in addition to us applying from the county's behalf, there are other communities that are joining in on this grant application in hopes that we would be able to strengthen that need for the application to be a little bit more favorable. Hopefully, we'll be able to be successful in that aspect.
Well, thank you. And again, I do want to say to all the people that you got the support from, which is the Edgewater Drive Advisory, the Curtis Fundamental, the ballpark. I mean, that's a real, and the linear park at the end, the Pinellas Trail. That is all the way to Patricia. So I just wanted people to be aware of it, of this opportunity, and also hear of all the people that have already weighed in on their interest in seeing this happen. So thank you very much.
Mayor, if I may?
Yep.
I can't be any more excited about this project. As the commission liaison to our community schools, and I sit on the School Transportation Safety Committee, we talk about safe routes to school all the time. I've talked with several of our local community schools about their issues. I've had several issues talking with Curtis Fundamental about the congestion that's around schools and where people park and the way parents drive with their busy schedules trying to get their young ones where they need to go. So in the fact that this is our second complete street opportunity here in Dunedin is fabulous. But I would encourage you to look for grants elsewhere because all of our schools need to be safe routes to school. We all heard recently of the recent tragedy in Clearwater that actually has Dunedin ties. And every child deserves the right to get to school safely. And so look for more grants. Patricia Avenue, we got a middle school and an elementary school that's right there at a busy intersection. So they could certainly use some love and attention. But thank you for bringing this forward. And had you not pulled it, it was certainly on my list. So well done.
It's a win-win for a lot of issues.
It really is, and the multimodal aspect of it makes me goosebumps.
Anybody else?
No, I mean, obviously, anytime we can get the opportunities to do this, it's a great thing. Planning, like actually not just throwing stuff together and people aren't safe, and we hope to make things more safe. So I'm glad you called it out, actually.
I thought it was great. Thank you.
Thumbs up, that's good.
Okay. And, be sure to let Nicole Kennedy know about this. Y'all know who she is, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, Nicole Kennedy has been a huge advocate for a better system there between the Jays and the Curtis, so.
And I would add the letter.
And she does ride her bike to school with her kids, so.
The The letter from the Jays didn't come from Shelby, it came from the head.
Yeah, it came from Mark
Yeah,
Shapiro,
which is
so,
awesome,
yeah,
It's a great letter.
it was great.
Mayor, if I may, just
Yes, please.
kudos to George and Francis for seeking out this grant and securing it. That was all, George came to me very excited that he'd found this grant, and I appreciate that they were proactive.
Very good.
And we don't see Frances enough anyway, thank
That's
you.
right. Need to
Good
get
to
her
see you,
up.
Frances.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve this MOU?
Second.
Vice Mayor Kynes and Commissioner Gao, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Oh, we made it through the consent
We
agenda.
did.
Yeah, check the list, make sure.
Is it time for lunch
When
or a
John,
break?
when Commissioner Torga said, well, consent agenda about the special events, I'm like, what are you talking about? We're not on the consent agenda. And I'm like, oh, yeah, we are. Okay.
Oh, my gosh.
All right,
Probably a record.
let's go ahead and take our little break now before we get to the next
right.
group of things.
I have to get a-
I know, I did too. Welcome back to our August 30th work session. We have a start item, which is a roll call vote on ordinance 2205. My bad.
It's not your bad, Mayor.
It is my bad.
This one.
But hang on, I just have to add it to the agenda because it's start item. So can I have a motion to?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Franny and Commissioner Tornga, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 5-0 to add it to the agenda. Now I'll turn it over to you.
Mayor, it had been a long week and a longer day, I think, for probably all of us, because in that moment, as after fully conducting the duly advertised public hearing, closing the discussion, we simply just forgot to register a roll call vote, which is required by your rules and procedures. So we're going to memorialize that now. So you are not reopening your public hearing. You are not reopening discussion. So a motion was made and seconded already to approve the ordinance that the clerk already has. So we actually don't even need a motion or a second. We just need for the mayor to call for a roll call vote on ordinance 2205.
Oh, I love you. So love you.
You better get that on tape. Come on.
I'm going to save that. It's going to be framed. No.
Yeah, it is on tape, so yeah.
But so Mayor, all you will do is call for, and just to remind the commission, because I know this is also part of your backup though, but ordinance 2205 is the Hammock Park zoning.
Which is so important. Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Frank,
Aye.
Commissioner Commissioner Tornga,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Kynes, Commissioner Gao,
Aye.
and Mayor Bujalski.
Aye, and that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you all. And that will be your shortest agenda item, I think, today.
Probably. Okay, now we'll move on to First United Methodist Church parking lease agreement.
I move to postpone
Second.
until date certain, September 13 work session.
Okay, that's Vice Mayor Kynes and Commissioner Franny. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay.
Somebody needs a mic.
No, I'm on.
She automatically assumed it was her. It was me.
Oh, good.
It was me.
I'm so happy when it's someone else.
All right, we now have the certificate of appropriateness for 225 President Street. Francis.
Yes, good morning. Frances Leong Sharp, Planner 2 for the City of Dunedin, once again presenting the application for a certificate of appropriateness for a carport located at the address at 225 President Street. I guess if somebody would please help me display the slide.
There we go. Well, not yet.
Oh, thank you. So you are probably familiar with this particular property because they have initially had submitted a certificate of appropriateness late last year, I believe it's late December, by Miss Linda Businger, who originally had asked for a COA, as you will, for the extension of their carriage house. And she is here once again asking for another COA for a proposed carport, which you will see on this diagram. The carport in itself is going to be located just in front of that carriage house, as the image shown here. And the proposed carport is essentially open on all four sides. And the roof line is to be matched with the current existing architecture of the primary house structure or complements to it. And this is an example of what she would like to place in front of the carriage house right next to the primary structure. The primary structure, once again, is a 1920s Mediterranean revival architectural style. The applicant, Ms. Businger, had indicated that the color of that carport is not going to be that color that you see there as an example, but it will match to the existing color scheme of the structure of the primary home and the carriage house in itself. And based upon that, the Historic Preservation Advisory Committee had met in July and recommended approval for the proposed carport structure. The proposed structure is not going to impact to any existing structures that sits on the site. So therefore, staff, along with Historic Preservation Advisory Committee, recommends approval for the proposed carport structure to be installed at the site. And staff is available for questions.
Okay, Commissioner, Vice Mayor?
I actually missed this meeting, so that was one of the few meetings I've ever missed. But, no, I read everything. It was a unanimous agreement with HPAC. It will be painted. Another one of the, to match the house, and another thing that I believe from reading your notes you thought was so important is, because it's open, it's more like a porte-cochere, and it does not block the newly renovated carriage house.
Correct.
You still have that in view. So, again, they were unanimously accepted this. It was staff recommendation, and I'm for it.
Okay, any questions?
Any questions?
Yes, ma'am. I noticed in the original picture, there's no driveway, there's no anything, it's all shell. And with what we're proving today is not only the carport, but a driveway, I guess, if that's what you want to call it. And I just want to make sure, are we also approving the driveway? Is that part of the certificate?
The certificate of appropriateness is specifically for the carport installation. I cannot speak to if there were improvements that were already made to the driveway. That may be an older image that was supplied, but that would be something that the applicant will have to come in if they are going to make improvements to that they would have to come in for another certificate of appropriateness for.
George, do you have have they already done that?
I did not think that the certificate of appropriateness was necessary for non-structural addition, so we'd have to check. I think we'd have to check to see if a driveway would be applicable under a COA requirement.
Okay, so if we said no today, that driveway would still be able to be put in, that wouldn't come before us. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think what Francis is saying is this application is strictly tied to the carport. However, if we find in our research that there is also a COA required for the improvements to the driveway, then they would need to bring that back under separate cover.
Okay. And because it is a separate structure standalone, that I would consider looking at the base of it temporary. Does it need a COA, or does she need to come before us for this?
The carport, yes.
Yes, okay, that's.
Yeah, based on the resolution for the COA matrix that was adopted about a few years ago, we are referring back to that particular matrix to determine which type of improvements that would have to be brought in front of the City Commission, or which type of improvements that would have to be brought in front of the Historic Preservation Advisory Committee.
And I would add to that the HPAC is going to be looking at that. If you recall, we do have a BPI in, Business Plan Initiative in for some consultant help from Kimley Horn, particularly Blair, who's going to come in and work with HPAC on taking a look at that and making sure it makes sense. So there's probably going to be some recommendations to that matrix going forward.
Okay. And I am pleased that it's going to be painted and it's not going to be the stained wood, although the stained wood is beautiful. I just don't know that it ties into the Mediterranean style. But I'm wondering if this is the final product for them, because it would be nice if there was some Mediterranean style actually attached to this. And it could be that I'm ignorant enough to have somebody tell me it already does, Commissioner. But it just looks like a beautiful carport, actually. But could there be?
Well, I don't think you're gonna, again, until it's painted, so it melds.
Right.
But, and I'm not an architect or anything like that, and they, the staff really, you had a background.
Oh my God, I'm not an architect.
Did
you just hear that?
What?
She's just recognizing that now. I mean, How long has
I thought
it
you were gonna argue
taken
that she
you
was, and I
to
was
recognize that you are not an architect?
This is really cruel to me.
After 18 years, she
I
finally
know.
admits she's not an architect. I want all the
But they
developers
are,
out
but-
there to
Yeah.
do that.
But she does have all the background, and we do have our field book of American architecture. So, that was their recommendation, and,
You gotta love this commission.
And again, and I'm certainly not going to argue with Linda either on what she's going to bring
No,
forward.
I had a question for her, so maybe we can argue with her. But I think I saw on Facebook she's not in town, so I just
Yeah,
said that.
I was going to say.
She could even be on a
she is
cruise
not
right
here,
now.
is she? Oh, my God.
Yeah, I know.
Those are the only questions that I have. Thank you.
Anything from you?
So, Deborah, you're not an architect, you're a historian. So the carriage house is called a carriage house because it used to have the horse carriages, right?
the carriage, now, wait a minute, a real carriage house
Okay.
would be the
Tell me.
one that's,
On Alt 19.
on Alt 19. That
Right.
really is.
Still has a for sale sign in front of it.
It was a real, and we could even check on that. Let's
We
look
better
at that.
check on
So
that.
this is a fake carriage house?
No, it was an accessory structure, and I think that it has been there since the inception. Or how long was that accessory structure? I mean, it was long before this property. I remember when someone else owned it and it was there, a long time ago.
Yeah, I cannot confirm or verify, I mean, I can verify afterwards, but it could be the possibility that the structure was added on after the home was constructed. But it was pretty evident that the carriage house, or the detached garage, as you will, was left existing for quite a long period of time, that we could deem it as a historic structure.
Well, that was really my question. So a carriage house used to have horse carriages, then becomes a garage which holds cars. So is this a garage?
Effectively, I mean, what it appears to be, just looking at it, it appears to be more of a garage than,
Yeah, that's why I just wondered why they needed the carport, so.
Other than the difference
But
in.
I'm
what
not
would
going
be
down
the
that rabbit
difference-
hole.
What would be the difference in the building, whether it's a garage or a carriage house?
No,
I just wondered, because why do you need a carport if you have a garage? So in other
right.
words, maybe it's part of the house.
And
I think
guess as a
she's made it part of the
clarification.
house, has she not?
yeah, so as a clarification from the
It's a
original.
it's a living space.
Yeah, it's
and
a
that's
living
what
space.
she came
That's what I
through
figured.
with the last COA, because.
Because in
it was-
general, I don't like carports, but, I'm not going to argue with historical preservation.
Yeah, as-
And I'm not going to argue with Linda. She's not here to defend herself, so I'm good.
Yes,
It's
so
a rabbit
as-
hole.
As mentioned, what Vice Mayor Kynes have referred to is that the previous certificate of appropriateness that they applied for was for that living space that you see here in the image, which does appear to be like a carriage house or a garage, but when in fact, in reality, it's a living space that they renovated.
Any questions, John?
You guys were going down rabbit holes, so I thought I'd get down one too, so thank you.
I have no questions. Anybody wish to come forward and speak to this item? Okay, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Vice Mayor Kynes and Commissioner Torunga, you already had your final comments. Any final comments, Commissioner Torunga?
No, I have nothing.
Anybody else?
I have nothing else, no.
And yeah,
Move forward.
I am definitely not going to get it. I figure if the historical group likes it
I
and
agree.
Linda likes it, it's good with me. All right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
I
Any
just thought if
opposed?
Linda's streaming this from somewhere
I'm
else
sure
in the
she
world, just give her a
And
little
yelling at us for
activation.
Any opposed? Okay.
Why is
Motion
anybody
passes
asking a
5-0.
question?
And do you know when the change is going to happen? You know, that meets and bounds and that whole thing?
That's part of what Blair's going to be looking at.
You know what?
Right, do you know when all that's happening?
They have been working on it, if I can. They have been working so hard all summer, and they have taken little parts of what they thought were really big issues in the ordinance. And I think you finished your last one, and now it goes to Blair.
Yes.
And so it was a really good way to do it because everybody got in all their questions. They said, should it be written this way? Should it be written this way? And now it has gone to Blair, who is the expert in historic preservation.
And I think, so that DPI would be approved in October, so I think we can get her in pretty much immediately. And then the timing from there would just be working with the board. Now, there was three things I think they're looking at:
Yes.
the ordinance, the matrix,
Resolution.
And
and the resolution. So it might take a little bit of time, but I would
So
anticipate.
sometime in the spring, probably?
That's what I would think, Mary.
I would anticipate that,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you. All right. Now we have the proposed agenda for September 13th. Everybody okay with that? All right, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Franny and Vice Mayor Kynes, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Then we have the agenda for the 15th, which of course has the very important review of our city manager on it. And in addition, we are adding the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office annual addendum for their contract, which is not shown on here. Can I have a motion to approve?
With the addition.
With the addition. Okay, Vice Mayor Kynes. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Franny, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, we'll move on to our workshop item.
Mayor?
Yes,
If I
ma'am.
may give an overview.
Sure. All right, the progress and status update relevant to our Calvin Giordano assessment.
So Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners, I did want to kind of frame our presentation this morning and where we are. And take us back to the summer of around July of 2019, and I think that the four of you recall that very well, and that was related to the Ficken case. Mr. Ficken had been cited for long grass and was accruing fines for a period of time, and that led to a national media onslaught, if you will. It was very uncomfortable for everybody here, and we still get hate mail on that basis. Some of us do. And so I do want to mention that the Ficken case has been through its first appeal at the 11th Circuit Court in Atlanta. And the court found in favor of the city of Dunedin. Mr. Ficken was provided with notice, and the fine was not excessive according to the court. And I think that's important to note. Regardless, it called to light some procedures that we needed to review in our code enforcement process at that time. And I remember sitting with the mayor during an interview, which was really contentious, and the mayor saying, regardless of whether we are right or wrong, you can always improve on our process, and that we will be reviewing our code enforcement process moving forward. And I think that was a crucial review as well. And so instead of staff who was at that time, really very much under fire, we needed to have a third party review our code enforcement processes, and somebody who was really very well versed in the best practices of code enforcement throughout the state and throughout the nation as well. And so we contracted with Calvin Giordano Associates, their office out of Tampa, to review our code enforcement practices and procedures and those types of things, which they did. And that resulted in a report that was reviewed by the Commission in February of 2020. Calvin Giordano made 7 very firm recommendations as a result of that report. And the City Commission then handed that over to staff to implement or not implement those recommendations. And I think that the story that we're going to tell you today is a very good story in terms of those 7 recommendations, those 7 areas that we could improve, and that related to the process, the code enforcement process itself, the release and relief of fines, the stipulated settlement agreements that we were not using. We're using a partial settlement agreement, which was an issue. The tiered violation, the nuisance abatement, and the capping of fines, the code board itself and the amnesty and the fine mitigation. You have seen several of those items separately because we had to amend the code, but you haven't seen everything all together. And so the city commission then, I think it was when we were looking at the tiered violation, had directed staff to bring back the whole thing to tell us, how we responded to Calvin Giordano, what we put in place, and what we did not. And so that is the report that we have for you this morning. And before I hand this over to George, I want to say that George came in mid-step to pick up this baton as far as the Calvin Giordano study goes, and he's been aided the whole way by Joey, who was here during that time. We have taken on professional staff, and I'm very proud of that as well, and the supervisor, and George will talk about that a little bit. So I'll hand it over to George, and thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. George.
Thank you, George.
I didn't say it.
Thank you. You?
I almost did.
Thank you again, Mayor. George Kinney with the Community Development Department. To my right, as you all know, is Joseph DePasqua, Assistant Director of the Community Development Department. And, Joey gets a lot of the credit for what you're going to see here. This really started under his watch. And a lot of the initiatives that you'll see that we've adopted over time, started and ended with him. And he's just simply, as Jennifer mentioned, helped me kind of keep the ball rolling and start to look at some of the other ones that were remaining. I also wanted to quickly introduce Julie Phillips behind me. Julie Phillips is, as most of you all know already, is our new code compliance supervisor. And I can't tell you what a terrific asset she has been and is continuing to be. And our last slide will kind of show some of the things that she's already thought about in her short tenure here and that she's moving forward with. But as Jennifer mentioned, I just wanted to start quickly with an overview. I only have about 7 slides here, so it shouldn't take too long. And Mayor, if you want to stop after, so there's 7 headings with some recommendations under each heading. And if you want us to stop after each one for questions, or we can roll all the way through however you want us to do it.
I think we'll go all the way through.
Okay. As was mentioned, Calvin Giordano Associates was hired in 2019 to prepare an assessment of the city's code enforcement process. Again, I wasn't here at the time. Joey was here. That was all shepherded under his watch. As Jennifer also mentioned, in January 2020, Calvin Giordano then did a complete analysis of our processes, of our programs, and then made recommendations in their report, which, as you know, is entitled The Assessment of Dunedin's Code Enforcement Process. They presented that report to you all on February 4th of 2020, at that February 4th meeting, which was a work session, there were several recommendations made by the commission to staff to start looking at some of these recommendations and start to make changes as was deemed appropriate. So what I'm going to kind of do, the next couple of slides kind of work in tandem with the report so you can see the section numbers and then the recommendations and then where we were with respect to each of the recommendations. So the first section was number 1, code enforcement process. One of the first recommendations was we needed to have a better rapport with our police agencies and a police liaison, if you will. We feel that we've completed that. We have an excellent working relationship with the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. I know Julie talks to them frequently, almost every day in some capacity. We also, through Teresa's work as the liaison to the Sheriff's Office, we work through her a lot. And Teresa's been a terrific help with respect to creating relationships with the Sheriff's Office. From a code supervisor position, obviously that's complete. Julie is sitting right behind me. That initial vacant code compliance inspector was converted in 2020 to a code compliance supervisor position. And of course, as you all know, this new position oversees the day-to-day operations and supervises 2 code compliance inspectors. And we are at full complement at this point, I will add. So we have Julie as a code compliance supervisor, and we also have 2 code compliance officers that are working in the office at this point. The third piece of portion 1 was certified training opportunities. This has also been completed. Code compliance certification pay policy was developed to encourage code compliance staff to increase job knowledge, professional status, and job competence. And they've been taking advantage of that. I think there's a little stipend that goes with completing a particular class. So it's been, I feel like we've got a very, very competent staff here. Amend legal notices. This is actually one item that we did not consider. It was made to just sort of clarify some of our legal notices. However, I think, and I'm not going to speak for Joey because I think some of that discussion took place before I got here, but I think in discussion of doing that, it didn't make a lot of sense to do that. Number one, it wasn't required by statute. And number two, I don't think we thought it would bring us as much clarity as we really have now. That was one change we did not make. And the last recommendation under the code enforcement process was to cross-reference addresses and create a protocol to do so, and we have done that as well. We have implemented a standard operating procedure for cross-referencing addresses to ensure that all code compliance correspondence goes directly to the property owners. So that's number one, piece one. Piece two is really about the release and what they call the release and relief process. And the recommendation was to discontinue partial lien releases. The staff did complete that aspect. We have discontinued the use of partial release settlements. We do still obviously offer full release settlements once we know we have compliance and the property has been mitigated. Section 3 is the stipulated settlement agreement section. I think Jennifer mentioned that. The recommendation there was to create a stipulated settlement agreement process. We've completed that, and I'll say kind of in part. We did that. We have created basically a negotiation process through the city lien amnesty program, but it's not necessarily a true stipulated settlement agreement, but it does offer, in essence, the same outcome. Where you can kind of negotiate certain aspects to a lien. Of course, all of it depends on a property being compliant at the end, at the beginning and at the end. Piece number 4 was the tiered violations. The recommendation was to create a program that would offer tiered opportunities, and we did that through the civil citation program. And that was actually, I was here for that particular aspect. That was done in June of 2021. As you know, that program has a companion resolution to it, which offers a tiered schedule and we believe offers a very fair and consistent treatment to code violations. Number 5 is the nuisance abatement and capping of fines. We did have cap fines under Ordinance 2035. Changes were processed to the Section 22.79 of the Code of Ordinances to remove rolling fines in favor of cap fines. By way of background, we have about 8 cases that have been capped. Those 8 cases cover only 3 property addresses, though, so it's multiple issues for the same address. Only one's come compliant at this point, but there are 7 cases still outstanding, but again, they've been capped. And if you recall, the way the cap works is if it was a first-time violation, the maximum fine could be $250, capped at 20 times for a maximum of $5,000. For a repeat violation, you could get a maximum fine of $500 a day, 20 times capped, so that would be $10,000. And then for an irreparable or very particularly hazardous situation, the max fine would be $5,000 with a 20-time cap at $100,000. And again, we have about 8 cases in that particular situation right now, with only one being mitigated. But we'll obviously continue to work with those other property owners. Finally, number 6, the code board procedures. We've made several recommendations and actions, implemented several recommendations there, particularly related to membership. The membership at this point reflects a recommendation to include a realtor. We have assured that rules permit oral argument, I guess prior to this assessment report, and essentially implementing this provision, we did not necessarily have to permit that. The Board of Adjustment and Appeals is very cognizant about allowing oral testimony, at this point. The one thing that we have not implemented to this point is consider use of a special magistrate. As the commission knows, we continue to use a volunteer board for case disposition, but it's obviously something that we can continue to look at going forward. And then finally, under number 7, recommendation to implement a lien amnesty program. As you know, that was recently done in 2021. Oops, my I'm sorry, and I just want to,
And George, we've had 18.
yeah, I got a couple little notes on that, right to Jennifer's point. So we've considered approximately, since that program's been in effect, we've considered approximately 28 applications. We have released more than $2.8 million from a 2.8 has been forgiven, and we've collected about $28,000. But what's important, obviously, is these sites are all completely mitigated at this point. So, and a lot of them, through the help of Nikki's office, have been found to be kind of foreclosure related. So there hasn't really been an opportunity to collect on those. But but we feel it's working extremely well, and as was conveyed to you when you updated that last resolution for the program. And then just some other quick positive changes. Superness has been a godsend as it comes to code compliance and really getting the word out, making sure people are educated, making sure people understand the rules and regulations. We obviously do our part internally, but her assistance has been great, and we continue to work with her. We have a really good working relationship with that division. In 2019, as many of you know, we secured host compliance to monitor short-term vacation rentals. We are currently upgrading that software to create additional efficiencies. We're adding 2 modules that is going to allow us to kind of reach in and dive a little deeper than we have in the past. And some thanks go out to Jen Welsh for that as well, for kind of pointing out the fact that there are some tiers to that program, and we're certainly going to lean on her to make sure everybody's happy with the implementation aspect of it. In 2019, we created courtesy door hangers for the purpose of education primarily, but also to let people know that we're in their neighborhoods. In 2020, we officially changed the name of the Code Enforcement Division to the Code Compliance Division. And then, of course, in 2022, the Code Supervisor vacant position was just recently filled by Julie. And then quickly, these are some of the things, and I got these bullet points directly from Julie. These are some of the things that she's already been working on and that she is going to continue to promote as we move forward. One is she has introduced and is starting to utilize what we call unlawful stickers as a visual enforcement. So they're basically bright cards, so they can be attached to something where people can see that we've been out there, that we've acted. So a lot of times what happens is we'll get back in the field and we'll get a call from neighbors and says, nobody's been out there, nobody's been out there. Well, it's because a lot of people just don't know. And it takes some time to work through the code enforcement process. And this helps people understand that, yes, we've been out there and we're actively working to clarify the situation. Julie has already filled the open code compliance position, as I mentioned, so we are full staff. She has taken her team already and proactively walked the downtown to do a meet and greet with business owners and hand out educational flyers. That was particularly related to the sandwich board signs and getting people to understand what the rules and regulations say with regards to those. She has also already, and she's been in my office several times showing updated standard operating procedure updates for code compliance, all very well thought out and all very well done. And then finally, she is with her team planning a neighborhood sweep with staff in late September, October, and the goal obviously is to remove blight such as boats and trailers and boat trailers, yard parking, outdoor storage, and any kind of overgrowth. So what I found under her watch is we've been a little bit more proactive, I think, than we have in the past. We were more reactive, I think, as short-staffed and with COVID and a lot of things going on, but certainly a much more proactive approach at this point. So with that really concludes my presentation. I have Joey here for any historical questions you might have, and certainly Julie's back there if you have any questions on the current code enforcement process, but we're happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Franny.
Okay. So are we doing citations?
Yes.
Okay. But we're not using the magistrate?
We will if there's an appeal.
Okay, so we haven't any appeal.
So for the civil citation process, if you recall, that appeal ends up with a magistrate.
And it's actually a DOA judge.
Yes.
Out of Tallahassee that would hear that appeal.
And so we obviously know how many citations we've given out, and
I don't think we've done too many to date, none to date. So the program is up and running. We just haven't we haven't gotten to the full swing yet, but
But we're not actually doing citations, because we haven't given any citations.
we haven't given any, but we are, the program is active.
Okay. Well, no, I'll save that for, okay, so in the 8 case, you said we have 8 cases that are in a capped position? And only one is mitigating itself, so of those 8, are they multiple infractions, are they one infraction?
Yeah, it's only 3 property addresses. So
There's
there's
3
like
property
3,
address,
I think there's 3 for one property address, 3 for another. There might be 4 for one, 3 for another, and 1 for the one that's mitigated.
And they're all actually sitting at their capped amounts now?
They're sitting at the capped amounts.
So what's the incentive now to comply?
A home sale probably would be the most likely incentive, because you're gonna have that lien attached to the property.
I don't think that's what she's asking, though.
Well, everybody up here knows my issue.
Yeah, can you?
That we went to the extreme, our cap is too low, and then we'll at some point, somebody hits it, because you can hit it quickly, and all of a sudden, there is absolutely zero incentive.
3 on one property.
Yeah, I got it, so now 15,000. Okay, gotcha. I just,
Yeah, they're capped fine, so for each violation, that fine caps. So not collectively, so if there's 4, I don't have the values in front of me.
Well, it's either 5 or 10.
Yeah, but it was a pretty high number for both those homes, if I recall.
I want to monitor those. I just want to, because again, if I've got a boat sitting on my lot and it's in violation, at some point I'll say, $5,000 for the rest of my life beats the heck out of a cost of putting my boat somewhere, right?
What I'll do, Commissioners, is follow up and I'll give you a breakdown of all of those properties.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great. Again, I mean,
Yeah.
you guys are just sitting in the seat of having to administer what we decide. I still feel we went too far. In a case that was, the guy had multiple properties, multiple violations, and, not focusing enough on the rest of the neighborhood that deserves to have a decent neighborhood. Okay, let me just see. The downtown, and Julie, this could even be you, the downtown issue with the signage.
Julie, come on forward.
And I know we've been through the
It's at the staff
pandemic.
table right there if you want.
Obviously the commission, this is a small issue in the big picture, but the whole issue, this commission decided, that we didn't want sandwich board signs downtown, except we'd allow chalkboard signs. And obviously, now we're back after the pandemic, because it's not something you want to pick on somebody about during pandemic. Interestingly enough, we've had the opposite. You made us sell all our signs. I did chalk signs. Now everybody's doing the wrong signs. Why did I comply and sell my signs and do chalk signs? So can you tell me, do people understand the rule now downtown, and are you seeing the compliance starting to come back?
I don't know if 100% understand a lot of the responses. We've had this up for 2 or 3 years, and they forget about the pandemic. I mean, we're pretty laxed in letting people sit outside, stay 6 feet apart. But I think moving forward, I just wanted to do a meet and greet with staff, give them a visual of who we are, give them an informative brochure that says, yes, it should be chalkboard-like with the dimensions, along with not having, certain signage on your umbrellas, banners, et cetera. So it's going to be a slow process, but we want everybody on the same page.
Okay.
We
So
want to
you're
be
kind of-
consistent.
And I mean, I've heard great things about you. I'm getting good feedback about you. I think having the right person in the right seat is big, and you have to create your own relationships with that.
Absolutely.
So I trust you, but, I just, it still makes me crazy now, because I think about the people that literally are, I went through all this, and I've got my chalk signs, and now all of a sudden, the other kind of signs are coming back. So, and again, it goes back to consistency is always, advantageous to the larger group of people, so.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for that.
You might as well just stay there.
When do we expect to have vacation rental, the other modules implemented, ready to go?
We've already purchased them, so I think we've had a kickoff meeting, and I think our training starts in earnest next month.
I want to say next month. They still require additional information from Pinellas County Property Appraiser, exactly what we want to do. We want to be able to identify who has registrations, BTRs, et cetera, go with all the zones. So once we make sure they have everything that we want and the verbiage and the notices that they'll be sending out for us, so staff doesn't have to utilize all that time in the office. So we should probably be looking at anywhere, maybe 12 weeks.
Right. And then, the other piece, because I think we're also finding out as we come back after the pandemic with outdoor dining, that some of our codes probably need to adjust themselves to the new reality. And obviously, the sooner we do that, the better, which is on the city manager and on all of us. But you kind of obviously get caught in the middle of all that. And I think key to that, again, is your relationship. We've got new community police officers, and so I'm assuming, like, have you met with them yet, the new community police officers?
I have had 3 encounters with them.
Okay, yeah. But would you say, I mean, are you kind of institutionalizing your relationship with the sheriff so that it's so easy that, because, I mean, I think that's part of the success, too, is that they're...
We're work in progress. I've been spending most of the time with staff more than the sheriff's office, but moving forward, I think they can work with us a lot. I mean, we need to work together and get to know them. They'll be running a lot of our tags if needed for vehicles and, have questions of things that we can enforce or if we need them to go to a door, but we have nothing but positive.
Great. And Jennifer, does the North District captain go to your department head meetings?
No.
I mean, it's my understanding, I was told from a good source, that used to be the case. I don't know if that's something you want, but it, seemed like a good idea.
They would send it to Lieutenant. Lieutenant Byrd used to attend.
Oh, did he? Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't the North District captain.
Okay. Well, you got a new North District captain, so maybe it could be.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Right.
Anyway, just a thought.
I can tell you, they are part of our internal traffic committee meeting, and we do hit on code compliance every once in a while from that perspective.
Yeah, and I mean, that doesn't necessarily help you. I mean, you just want to have great relationships on the people that, are on the street, so to speak, so.
Absolutely.
Okay. I guess that's my questions for right now. I'll let other people have a chance.
Commissioner Torga?
Thank you. I had a great conversation with Jennifer about the subject matter, and I promised that I wanted to stay within the concept of this report, just of this report. So I have additional questions, and if there's time later, I'll ask those. But from the report standpoint, it sounds like we accomplished what we needed to get accomplished, and we kind of went through that. And so now I want to ask you guys, if I may, across the board, is this sort of now, are you happy with where we are with this compliance that you're reporting? Is this sort of where we need to be at this point?
That's kind of a broad question. Are you
broad.
saying?
No, I'm intentionally being very broad.
I would like to see some changes to the code, if you will. I think where we are as far as staff leveling, we're fine right now. Moving forward, we have an actual process that myself and staff will be following, but I would like to see some amendments to the code to make our job easier and defining some of the issues a little easier for us and the citizens as well.
Thank you. We actually talked about that, and I wasn't going to bring that up. So your responsibility is code compliance, and then of course ours is to ensure that the code is a workable code within the city. So and it was mentioned already that we're looking at, that we'll be looking at.
If I could just add, Commissioner, as you know, we're also going to be looking at our land development code rewrite, and Julie is obviously where we communicate frequently, often, we're always talking. So Julie's already looking at some of those code provisions, which might make make sense to change. She's already got some recommendations that she's moving forward with.
Fantastic. No, good.
But the other thing I would add very quickly too is that I certainly appreciate what the commission has done with respect to the toolkit that you've provided. This is a tremendous toolkit. When you start talking about civil citation processes, lien amnesty, capping, whatever it might be, those 7 items, you saw all those recommendations. A lot of those were tools that you had the forethought to bring to us to allow us to use. So I think from that perspective, we've got a lot of ability to be creative in how we approach a certain violation and how we disposition a certain violation. So
And get the violation taken care of, because that's what you're trying to do, correct?
absolutely. Yeah, our goal is mitigation. And I just want to remind the commission too, that we have like a 99% voluntary compliance rate. So when we're talking about the people that we're dealing with, it is a very small fraction of the city.
So it sounds to me like this, what's taken place so far, and I promise to stay on that subject matter, because I could go on for a bit, but it sounds like you've got sort of the toolkit that you need. And specifically about that toolkit, and you talked about it, and I wanted to bring that up, and in relationship to Commissioner Moe. She had a concern that we had swung too far, okay? And I specifically felt like we were good, and I hope I was right, and I appreciate your concern. I do.
And I hope
No,
you're
I do.
right, too.
No, I do.
Yeah,
I
don't
do.
get me
And
wrong,
she
I hope
hopes,
you're right,
and
too.
she hopes that that's right. How do you feel about that so far now?
Oh, be
You know,
very careful.
what I think has changed a little bit today, and let me, I agree with Julie and I agree with George wholeheartedly, but I also see right now is kind of, we're still in the beginning. We have a new team, we have a new team leader, we have some new staff that are coming on board, and we have all these tools at our disposal. And I go back to Commissioner Freeney. I've heard her concerns. I understand them completely, having done this for a long time. I think a case now with a boat, for example, using that is going to be handled differently today with the toolbox we have. We're probably not going to do a standard case on that. We're going to probably do a civil citation. That's easily remediable, move your boat. And so the capping, I don't think, plays into those types of transient violations. So my answer to your question was, on the whole of everything we're talking about here today and everything we've been able to accomplish as a team, I think we're in a much better situation today to handle the myriad of challenges that our code compliance staff deal with. And you know, Julie's in my office all the time. We're talking. She's bringing a lot of experience from another community. So I think from this point forward, I think you're going to find that everything we have at our disposal is going to make us a much better group, and in turn is going to make the city the place that everybody expects it to be. So, I mean, I hope that's not, I hope that answers your question.
It does.
But I really do feel like we're in a really good place right now.
It really does.
And it's taken a while to get here, having seen all of it. I've been involved in this now with code compliance here at the city since 2016. And I think where we are today is just leaps and bounds ahead of where we were, back then.
Yeah, we
and
talked.
No criticism on previous. It's just I think we're in a much better place.
Thank you. We talked about that yesterday, and we talked about how we're just trying to do this in compliance for example, within a neighborhood, for the neighbors, for the neighborhood, and what's the easiest way to do that? And again, we come back. If I focus just on what this report is doing, this report sounds like we've done it. It's taken place now in general, and there'll be updates to this. And then I do have to ask one specific, just to give an example. So we've had, because I ask about this somewhat frequently, we had a gentleman come in here by the name of I guess I can use his name, is Tim from Spanish Trails, and he had an issue, and he came before us just relatively recently. And is this helping mitigate that situation at all? And would you just mind telling the folks what I'm talking about, what the issue was, just broadly, and then that's still with code compliance.
Yeah, I think Jennifer.
Yeah. Commissioner, I've got the Bordeaux. We actually met with Mr. Bordeaux, and it's an issue regarding drainage, and having pulled out a seawall and replaced it with a seawall that wasn't permitted on Mr. Bordeaux's property. It's more in the engineering side of the house than it is in the code compliance side of the house at this point. As I said, we met with Mr. Bordeaux. His attorney is to submit to us a remedy for the situation, and then staff will review that remedy. That said, he could apply for the Amnesty program.
After it's brought into compliance.
Right, after it's brought into compliance, and we're working on that, bringing it into compliance. I'm not sure how much that he would be able to avail himself, because it's been a long time, as you know, that he's been out of compliance. And there's a degrees of amnesty. based upon percentage points and how long it's taken and what the violation was. So to answer your question directly, he could submit for the amnesty program once he's in compliance.
So does this entire program now, this report that we have, does this assist us with a situation like this one that was just described, Tim Bordeaux?
Yeah, my recommendation, yeah, I would say yes, absolutely. And that's an older case, and obviously that case even predates my tenure here at the city. But anybody right now who has a case that is an older case, and remember we sent out a lot of letters, they have the opportunity, once they achieve compliance, to get some measure of relief, or at least request it. And as the city manager said, there's some factors that weigh into how much you can be availed to. But yeah, I think now we have the instruments to try to get to, ultimately, to compliance. And when folks voluntarily comply, very quick and very early, it's a very simple process. The Bordeaux's of the world may be a little longer, but ultimately they can avail themselves to an opportunity to get a request for relief.
Thank you. I just want you to know, thank you. I just want you to know that that's what I wanted to hear, and I think that's what everybody here wants to hear.
I think it's helped our discussions, the city manager and, with the city manager and legal with their counsel, because they know that there's a resolution on the other side. There's an application that they can make, and there is going to be a discussion about how the lien amount might not actually be a real number, even though it's a high number, because they haven't complied yet. And it's a functioning drainage swale that the city needs to be sure continues to function. So we're going to get to that path, but I think before maybe having the discussion but we'll just talk about that when we get to it, versus here's a resolution, here's a path forward that you would have available to you once you achieve compliance. It's actually been a little bit of a compliance tool in that way, and I think helped our discussions to get to where we are.
And City Manager, you feel the same way, correct?
Oh, I do, yes.
I mean, that's what you said.
I just wanted, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Long, but thank you.
Any questions?
That was good.
Well, I did see you and everybody walking around downtown, and the questions I've received are, of course, on the blackboard signs, is just how I think the placement and, you all are out there talking to people so that they can, I had one person say, I've given up, I'm taking it home. Another person said, oh, I love my blackboard sign. So, you've got that variation. And so you're going to probably have to continue just to do what you're doing and to really talking to people and, giving them the real criteria that is fair and equitable, to all. So I've heard about that. Of course, the outdoor dining, that's another issue we all know. We're doing the task force. I think that's going to be a wonderful way for a lot of different differing entities to really talk this through in our downtown. And then I still hear a lot about the STVRs, so I was just calling them STRs. Jennifer told me, no, they're STVRs.
I call them STRs too.
Yeah.
Like Jennifer.
What's the difference?
Well,
There isn't.
I don't know.
I just say no. I say
Anyway.
Admitted you weren't an architect, so maybe it'll take a little bit for this one to think.
But I still hear a lot about them, because what we did was we said it's in commercial areas, they're allowed. The premise was to keep them out of, long-standing residential communities. And so I think you said it was coming, this was, when is our new tech things coming on?
So
with
we
it?
already had our kickoff meeting. I think we anticipate maybe middle, end of September, at least primarily finalizing our training. There's some training aspects to it, and we have to get some data to them yet. But once we do all that, I imagine we'll implement it within a couple of weeks. So I'm going to say by the fall.
Okay, no, I mean, that's, I know that was one of the requests from people that have these STVRs, that, there be a broadened tech availability, and so you all are doing that. Now, this is for Nikki, because, you know, with the capping of the citations, how does that intermingle with a homestead? Because, you get my question?
Homestead liens don't, if your property is homestead, the lien doesn't exist.
Right, you cannot lien a homestead. So if some of these houses are homestead with the capping of the fines, just explain that to me. They're going to owe that much money, but you can't put a lien against a homesteaded house.
Yeah, that exists whether or not it's capped or not. If it's a homestead property, it's a paper lien. It does not exist unless and until that property is no longer a homestead.
Okay, so that's the differentiation I'm trying to make, because I thought you said home, so there is a differentiation between a building and a homestead.
Well, certainly, I think that the Code Compliance Division has code violations or receives notice of code violations that occur on all kinds of buildings throughout the property, or throughout the city. Some may be residential properties that are not entitled to the, that do not have a constitutional homestead protection. Some may be, and that was the example of Mr. Ficken's property because it was an investment property. Or others may be commercial or other non-residential buildings that aren't entitled to homestead protections, but it's just a function of the Florida Constitution. Liens do not exist on your homestead unless they are consented to. So mortgages, things like that, that's why they have you sign, and they have your spouse sign. But even whether or not they're on the title to the property or not, because of the constitutional protections that also flow to spouses through the Florida Constitution. But capping that's not a function of capping, that's a function of the Constitution.
Right.
That the lien doesn't exist on homestead.
I mean, the differentiation is that if it were a homestead, they could still get a capped fine.
Or it might be that if it's
But you could not put a lien against the property.
Yes, it might be that if it's a homestead, the Code Compliance Division is going to be trying all different types of tools in their toolbox, though, that might be more effective because of the inability to lien the property.
Okay, I was just trying to sort that out. So, thank you, and I do agree, you know, the more tools in the toolbox you have to look at different situations, then the better the outcomes are ultimately going to be. When she brought out the unlawful stickers, I thought, oh my gosh, I better rush home right now and see if I've got one of those big things on my house. Just kidding. But anyway, no, I think I'm hearing some great ideas. I like it that you're down there, you're talking to people. It might be sort of a continuing educational process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner?
Thank you. I love the conversation, and loved the presentation today. I certainly share the same concerns with the capping, and I'd like to ask that somehow there's, I don't want to lose sight of the concern, and so if there can be some report that is presented to us periodically, whatever that would be, quarterly, semi-annually, annually, something like that.
Can we just put that on the city manager's report?
That's what I was
You know.
I could report that back.
Sure. So, yeah, as you know, I send correspondence to you quarterly and monthly, so I could put it on the quarterly report.
That'd be fine.
We do it with the lien,
It's a
with the
memo.
amnesty
Right.
information.
Yeah,
Just
with
so
lien
we
and
don't
amnesty, right,
Lose
information.
track, and so with that, then maybe there's something we can address as a commission on that. The unlawful stickers, I kind of like the idea. Has that been implemented yet, or just an idea?
Oh, no, they've been implemented. We use them.
Okay, because I like the idea, because certainly it cuts down on the phone calls to you from the neighbors. But, but I am concerned
I don't know what they
about-
are. Can I just ask what the unlawful stickers are? I don't know what they are.
Sure, an unlawful sticker, I guess, prior to my coming here, staff didn't do a lot of things that were in the street. We do have codes where we can enforce things in streets, whether it be a trailer without a tag or maybe a motorhome that shouldn't be parked in the street. So if staff is not, if nobody comes to the door, they're not sure who owns it, you could simply check it off and say, you know, this is not a lot for vehicle sales, or RV should not be parked in the street, and it's unlawful to be parked in the street. You would check off the box, sign your name. So when the individual got home, they could call staff, ask them why we were there, they could explain the code to them. So, you know, we get so many calls, well, so-and-so's parked in front of my street, they should be parked in front of their own house. So anything like that where you can give them a visual, let them know we were there, we have the opportunity to explain, we're letting them know it's a violation. It's just a visual.
That's great.
And then the person reported can see that.
Yeah,
They've been out.
good. Okay, good. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
And if that's successful, I kind of like the program. I'm a little concerned on maybe a public shaming aspect of it with a violator. And all of a sudden, it's like a scarlet letter. And whether, you know, the feedback on that, just to be sensitive, even though the breaking code, but, you know, we want to be nice to our residents. That was my only concern. And STRs, yeah, please get the training and get that. That's a concern for me as well. But other than that, I'm very happy to hear that it's working as intended. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. So the state law that changed that requires that somebody, reports, they can't be anonymous. You have a sense of how it's affected our, before the laws passed, before and after, how it's affected folks calling in?
I think it's 50-50. When somebody gets to the point where they call in, I think they've had enough. There's also people, the flip side, I think you folks call them bad actors, who like to harass their neighbors all the time and call in, but they don't want to leave their name. So I think it's a 50-50. I can see how some people aren't comfortable leaving their name and address because they don't want the retaliation. But at the same time, if something is that much of a nuisance, you shouldn't really hesitate to give your name and address as it's affecting you and your family. So I would have to say 50-50.
And I heard you saying a little while ago, somebody saying, about the proactive versus reactive. We've always been reactive because we've just never had the staff time to be proactive. I think you're trying to change that, right? And if you are, at least to some degree, can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. And, in my background, I've been doing this 27 years. If somebody has called in and said, there's an RV, it's been parked in my driveway for a week, of course you're going to go out and investigate that. To me, you can't go out and investigate that and not go down the rest of the street and ignore the boat and ignore the peeling paint and the work without a permit. To me, that's selective enforcement, and that's how code gets a bad name. So moving forward, what I'd like staff to do is when you go to a street and you see a violation, you check that whole street for the same violation, whether it's a school bus or it's a truck yard parking, whatever it is. I think being fair and consistent, it's important to do that. I would like to eventually, as George stated earlier, go proactive in the neighborhoods with staff, ones that need more attention, just to get rid of the blight, the boats, the trailers, the yard parking. It's important to do, and it makes the community and the neighborhood look better.
How about main corridors?
Main corridors are a major pet peeve of mine. I think it's important to do that for signage, for blight, and just to make sure they're in good condition, mode. It's very important.
To be proactive.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that can kind of offset, right, the lack of people calling in. Because really, sometimes you can get blind to what you see because you're just so used to it being there. Mm-hmm. So, all right, that was one question. STR, same thing. So, one of the things we've struggled with is getting the STRs in our city to actually register with us. One of the things we've heard is, why should I register when you're not enforcing it? Why should I help you pay for that then? So will the new modules and all of that help us enforce the actual registration process too?
It should. Registration, business tax receipt. the conditional uses, who's legal, and getting all the zoning. It's just information they need. Once we get all that information in, we can move forward.
Okay. And then one of the things, as you're going around, here you are going around and meet the businesses because you're about to tell them their signs are illegal, right? But so you're, same thing, you're going around to meet other groups. It's the same with SDRs. You can remember when we sent out those letters and the wording of our letters pissed everybody off. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, they were really angry. That is the best way to describe it. I mean, we heard a lot. And then you've got the people that are doing it the right way that say, well, forget that. So I just say that because there has to be relationship building there as well on both sides. When you talk about a neighborhood sweep, the word sweep kind of sounds like you're getting ready to, go in and kick butt and take names kind of thing.
Clear out the drugs. No.
Yeah, but not.
So your approach to this is it what you just described? Look, if we're going to one thing on a street, we're going to go to everything, or we're going to go through areas and meet people? I mean, talk to me about that.
A sweep really isn't a meet and greet. I would probably utilize...
That's why I'm asking to clarify.
We would utilize some sort of social media, probably let them know we're coming. The purpose of that is when you have some neighborhoods that have a lot of blight, whether it be garbage, whether it be junk, whether it need to be things they need to get rid of, boats, RVs, trailers, etc. The idea is to work with other departments such as solid waste if we can get bored, if anybody wants to throw away things, and we can go out and pick them up together. I haven't spoke to them about this yet, but that's what I'm accustomed to. Then they go out and pick it up. You warn people, you can't have the vehicles, and you label these things of what we're looking for. You shouldn't have your RV parked here. You shouldn't have your boats here. There is a code against grass parking, so you can actually take care of all these before we get there, but then you're documenting. I mean, you're educating, you're giving them some relief with some trash, whether it be TVs, tires, or whatever they can't just regularly throw away, helping the community in that way. And then just going through, leaving a door hanger saying, hey, this is why we're here, give them that time to get rid of it, but that's a sweep. And if it comes to a notice of violation, that's how you enforce. So it's definitely an education process first, but you're also giving some sort of relief and removing some things that maybe they're not capable of getting rid of, and moving forward and cleaning up the neighborhood. That's the purpose.
Okay.
Mayor, ma'am.
Yes.
I just want to add on to that's a fairly standard, code compliance procedure.
Yep.
And the word sweep always makes people nervous, and I'm sure
That's why I
there'll be
asked the question.
Right, there'll be a communications component. That said, the same way with when Julie and I think it was Chelsea, right? Who are you walking downtown with?
Both staff, Chelsea and Michelle.
Chelsea and Michelle. You heard it. You got emails from your constituents saying, what are they doing? And the same thing's going to happen. And I just feel that the five of you, I would appreciate it if you just turn it over to staff and we'll take care of it.
Well, and that's exactly why I'm asking, so that we know.
Mm-hmm.
We understand what's going to happen.
Sounds like a DUI checkpoint.
I know it does.
It's going to be here.
But, I also think it's important, and the reason I bring these things up is, relationships are everything.
Mm-hmm.
But relationships can only take you so far. And maybe relationships have gotten us into some of the trouble we've been in, So I'm just saying there's a balance, and that's why I wanted to ask the question in case anybody's watching, they understand, and yeah, if we get those emails, we've certainly gotten the emails about you being in the downtown. You haven't heard from me though, have you?
No, I'm not calling.
I'm not.
No, I
Nope,
terrorize
what I want you to
Jennifer.
do.
I don't terrorize.
I didn't even call her. Nope. Sorry. Give it a chance to work. And then finally, and I don't know how this normally works, and this might be a building inspector thing versus a code person, but, we heard here from a couple of gals who had also been at the Edgewater Drive meeting that Whit Blanton and I attended, and they were talking about construction projects starting before the noise ordinance, starting at 6 instead of 7, not having, those sandbags in front of the drainage, having porta potties in the middle of the sidewalk, any number of things, right? How does that get reviewed when there's a construction project? And I'm really talking about houses in neighborhoods. I'm not talking about the big stuff on a main drag.
So Mayor, yeah, so I think when it comes to that specific scenario, I certainly want everybody from the public to know, it's an active construction sites, permit issued, work going on. The best course of action would be contact our building division and have a building inspector go out. It might be coupled with a public works inspector, because we might be talking about some of that stormwater stuff, silt fences, not having your socks in your drainage pipe. We'll probably handle that. If we need to, those folks on that side of it, whether it be our building division team, public works, could be arborist related, could be stormwater related, would work with Julie. And if we had to open a case, we would. But typically with construction sites, because there's a permit and there's a measure of approval there, we can go out there and put a correction notice on them, tell them you need to clean the site up. Our public works folks do the same thing. So that's the way we recommend people handle it.
Right, but so what I'm asking is do we proactively monitor it?
Yes.
So that because, again, people don't like to call in.
Yeah, so, well, and when I say yes, what I mean is we don't have one building inspector going out and monitoring the job sites within the city, but we do have 4 that commute throughout the city, and if they see situations, they will stop. We also have our engineering, public works inspectors. They will also stop if they see, a great example is, if this building inspector drives by the site and sees a portalet sitting in the middle of a sidewalk, they're going to stop and say, can you move that? That's not good. Or if their silt fences are down, I'd be willing to bet the folks from Public Works are going to stop or contact the contractor. So yes, that's part of their sort of their daily route, similar to what Julie was talking about with the code case. If you go for one violation, kind of look at the street, they're going to be looking as well. So, but if somebody sees it who's outside of that, Mayor, they would just need to contact us and we would send somebody out.
It's generally the neighbors, and again, it's within a neighborhood, so it's not generally someplace you would normally drive by. It's not on a main corridor.
The only thing I want to just quickly add, though, and you kind of referenced it, is that we do rely on other agencies to assist in certain situations. So we might have, somebody's calling, well, they got harassed or construction started early. Well, we're not in the office at that point, so we need the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office to help us. We need engineering to assist. The engineering division actually has inspectors that can go out and do stop works and do those kinds of things. So we typically want them to be the ones that handle those because they're the subject matter experts. So in certain instances, a lot of times we will take the initial complaint, but then it gets filtered to the appropriate departments, and we rely on them to assist us with whatever aspect that they might have a little bit of control over. So I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, exactly. George is right. If it's building related, if it has something to do with the permit, let's say they're not keeping their debris in their dumpster, typically a building inspector is going to go out there and you need to contain that because that falls within the building code. But if it's site related, it might get moved over to our public works folks. If it's tree related, certainly the arborist and so on. Sheriff's office for after hours. And they've been very responsive when I've contacted the sheriff's office. Where I've told them we've had multiple complaints, perhaps for starting early, and it's always the construction. It's the concrete trucks before 7 a.m. That's the most common before hours violation we hear about. So.
Okay.
Can I ask a question on that? What is the fine for them if they continue to violate it? And my example all I could think about was when they were building the house, the old Skinner property, and they built the house that you could come in off of Alt 19 and you could come in off of the dead end of Santa Barbara. They had it on their building permit that they had to go off Alt 19. Well, you told them forever, and they did it. You guys even put signs at the beginning of the dead end, and they blew right through it. They still did it. It was crazy. So what's the ramifications for them if they do that?
Police citation, right?
Yeah, I would think law enforcement at that point would have to be involved. In that specific case, you're right. It was, I spoke to that builder probably more than a dozen times during that construction. and it was his subs. He had standing orders with all, and that specifically, they had standing orders with everybody, do not go down that road with construction vehicles. And when I would call him, he'd be like, are you kidding me? I said, no, they went down the street. I got pictures of it from the neighbors. So that's pretty rare, though. We don't get a lot of that.
Yeah.
What we get is usually one phone call from somebody on staff saying, hey, you guys can't start pouring concrete and having trucks on the street at 5 a.m. Just can't do that in a neighborhood. Be a little, and it usually never happens again.
Yeah.
So.
Call your commissioner.
Yeah, trust me, everybody was calling their commissioner, and it wasn't, I just, I almost just like, okay, I give up, And you guys, I'm sure, gave up too, because it was crazy land, so. Because they just blew right,
It's on that old brick street, too.
Well, that was the
really
problem.
wrecked.
That was the problem, was they
That
were
was part of
ruining
it.
this.
But I felt bad about the people at the dead end, because, they just couldn't get a break. It was constant. So anyway, yeah, I was just curious, because but again, I guess that was a one-off, kind of a unique thing, so.
So Jennifer, what do you see as the next steps?
Well, I think that we carry on, actually. To echo what Joey said, and I think he said it so well. We're in a much better place now than we've ever been, as far as staff in place, as far as the toolkit that we have. And I think that we just implement. And it's going to be, like I said, it gets rocky, because we're going to have to go through these neighborhoods, and there are boats and trailers and all those sorts of things that kind of reappeared during the pandemic, because they didn't want to have to store them, pay for storage anymore. And, so I always say getting that genie back in the bottle, but we got to get the genie back in the bottle. So I think that we need to go, full force on implementation of our new toolkit, and report back to all of you. So I'm really pleased with the progress that we've made.
Okay.
I have some comments for the end. I didn't.
I was
Okay,
going to do that. I don't see anybody from the public here, so there is no public comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, there is a lot of good stuff, really. And Julie, I think you're number one at the top of the good stuff, because you get the right person, right philosophy, what was it, Brene Brown, clear as kind, that's the phrase, clear as kind. And it's because, so much misunderstanding creates the aggravation. So, clarity, part of that's going to be on us to help our codes be better. Appreciate, any input to that you have. And then the consistency on your part. Consistency. Whoever you are, it's consistency. Nice, but consistent, right? Not nice doesn't always work. So, I appreciate the comments that I think, Joe, you might have made it. We're at the beginning of this. There were a lot of things. Pandemic, we didn't enforce a lot. We have the new, you can't call in anonymously, which has a mixed bag. I had a situation in my neighborhood where people literally, and I understood it, they were afraid. They were afraid to call. And that thing's taken care of itself in a very unfortunate way. But anyway, the vacancies. So we've had a lot of that. But what I'm interested as we go forward is just the numbers. As we kind of move through, the number of complaints, the number of things that, you notice people once and it goes away. So we can truly know, is this because people are afraid to call in? Or do we have just as many people asking about stuff, but stuff goes away? It truly is voluntary compliance. What are the situations with the situations where we're capping, and how is that resolving? Are we using all our creative tools? And Joe, I appreciate the fact that you've got other tools to use. So again, it's all about compliance for me too, and not having a neighborhood suffer even one bad actor who just makes their life miserable. And do we have enough tools to do that? And we don't always have enough tools. It's hard. It's hard. It's complicated. I like the proactive neighborhood sweeps. I like the way you described it. I think it was a great question to make sure we're understanding what it is. And I absolutely love the Amnesty program. Because again, Nikki, I think the way you said it is great. It gives an understanding that, no, we actually don't want to take $100,000 from you. And we absolutely never really ever did, probably, in the history of Dunedin. But that number sat there as something that would freak people out, that why would you try to go after that kind of money? So now we have an understanding that that's on the table, like we're all about compliance, and you can actually get forgiveness on a lot of this if you just comply. So I think all that's good. I think we have done a lot of really great changes. Again, the vacation rental issue, I think, is one that I hear the most about. And of course, my irritation is the signs in downtown. You know that now. But again, we think we have a great community, and it's about being good neighbors. And you're going to stand in that stead as the good neighbor person who sometimes has to play hardball to get, to do what you can do to get the bad actors to comply too. So you're staying, I think. That's my number one question. You're staying for a long time, right?
My intent.
Okay, good. All right. That's all I had.
So, Mayor, if I could just add one thing that I think is really important that we haven't brought up is that Julie is also scheduling code enforcement officers, code compliance officers during the weekend now as well, correct?
Great idea.
We'll start doing that probably on an as-needed basis and rotating depending on what the severity is. But yes, definitely, we're all on board with that.
Right. So I think that's important for the community to know, i.e. work without a permit, because that normally happens on Saturdays and Sundays. So, thank you.
Any final comments, Commissioner Torga?
Yes, I do. You heard what I said before about the compliance, and I wish that no one ever had to call you. I wish that we had enough communication. So there's 2 points. We have enough communication going out so people understand what the rules are. So, for example, if you have an individual who may be the chair of the community, okay? We don't always remember what they all are, what the rules are, and so if you're telling us via some communication, a broad communication that yeah, you can't have a school bus parked in front of your house for 7 weeks. I mean, here's the rule. So at least people would know what that rule is, and as I mentioned in our conversation, hopefully no one ever has to call, because you guys are out there and just letting people know, hey, we need to straighten some things out. I realize that's not totally realistic, but yes, implementation, yeah, go. Thank you.
Welcome.
Vice Mayor, final comments?
Yes, and this is really succinct. I think that what you all are dealing with, and we've only seen it every 100 years, and we hope we don't ever see it again. But with the pandemic, we really did try to back off. I mean, people were having a very difficult time. And I think, again, with compliance, code compliance, the primary objective is to really let the community know that this is fair and equitable across the board. And that's sort of the golden mean that we all want to be at. And I think our community also wants us to be in that place. So, I'm pleased. I'm a little worried about the capping, a little worried, but that's going to play out. You're going to do that. You're going to give us the statistics. And actually, I think we've made some great strides. Again, it's just going back and trying to find that golden mean, fair and equitable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Nobody ever wants to talk about this stuff. It's the ugly part of business. In the idea that you can always improve the process, and the fact that this is what we did or in the process of doing. And so it's just been wonderful to see what we've seen. I like the idea of being able to look at things going forward and how we can even change and do better. But overall, this is just a wonderful process. So thank you guys for the presentation. Appreciate it.
So thank you, everyone. First, I want to thank all of the planning, community redevelopment department, staff, as well as our city hall staff, for everything that they went through during our crisis grass gate. I mean, the phone calls were really messed with people. Their psyche. I mean, it was bad. It was bad for all of us, too.
You got the brunt, though.
I did. But, so I think, I don't want that to go unsaid. And, it's going to continue until they go to the Supreme Court and do what they're going to do. And I also want to thank Jennifer for, talking about bringing Calvin Giordano, forward, and for all of you working on implementing it, all the different layers of people, and now Julie's here. So, and we also now have a communications department, which we didn't have at the time. So I agree with you. I think the pandemic has made people cranky as well. And, it's easy to forget that we felt besides human safety during the pandemic, which was a huge focus for us, it was also the preservation of our business community was right there as equal to us. And I can remember that first week having a business who I will not name call me up and said there was a code guy here giving me crap because I have some lawn chairs out in the parking lot for people to sit in. I'll never forget that. I thought, how ridiculously stupid was that person to go do that? Meaning the code person who's no longer with us. I mean, how does that messaging, how does that not? And so, should we take it too far? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. All I know is that each and every one of us cared about our business community and their survival. And anything that we could do outside of life safety issues, which is, we were never going to let that go, we were going to do to help them. A number of those same businesses, for whatever reason, I think have forgotten that. And then, of course, we've had struggle in hiring people, struggle implementing things, and here we are. We're there. Did it take us too long? Of course it did. Was it purposeful or, well, it wasn't purposeful. And it certainly wasn't because we don't have a lot of really smart people working for our city. There are too many priorities at one time. And that's nobody's fault. So I appreciate everything that you all do. I appreciate that we're moving forward in a positive way. I encourage you to keep building your relationships. I hope the task force will also help with some of this, and I encourage you to have her there as well. Keep us posted on when that first round of STR stuff happens so that we're prepared for the 5,000 emails we might get. Continue to mow grass if you see it high and can't get response. Continue to do those kinds of things because it does at least help eliminate some of the anger going on in the neighborhood until the long-term solution, is found. And thanks for the report today. All right, good job, guys.
Thank you.
Great, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right, now we have informational items, and we have commission discussion. I didn't get any emails on any commission discussion, I'm assuming there isn't. Great. Okay. City clerk's update. None?
Wow, no. I have no information to share.
Okay. City manager's update.
My written update is attached to this commission agenda item, and that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Okey-doke, city attorney's update.
I don't have an update, but since you all have just received a nice overview of a lot of the code enforcement initiatives that you all began several years ago, you may remember there is one item that we brought back several times for discussion for the commission. That was a recommendation from the ORC on some recommended changes to Chapter 22 of the city's code, which is the code section that governs the code enforcement board. And the one main, so at the time, and this is again now going back to that same time, February 2020 or so, the ORC recommendation was to change the representation of the code board from being represented by the city attorney to not being represented by the city attorney. The city commission instructed that an ordinance be brought back at that time. No ordinance was brought back, and then as we've been cleaning up and bringing back the ordinances from the ORC that were instructed from the commission, we have this one. But I don't want to leave the code board flying without counsel. So, if that change is made, our firm will no longer be able to represent the code board, but the code board would need representation, or the city would need to administer those proceedings through another method, whether that's a privately employed magistrate, whether it's a DOA magistrate, but there would need to be some decision-making body alternative than if the commission elected to not proceed with getting counsel for the code board. So I'm bringing it up as an update to remind you all that we still need to address that issue at some point, because I can't leave direction from you all hanging out. I want to follow your direction, and the last direction you gave was bring us back this ordinance, but I don't want to bring back an ordinance that cuts off our code board from being able to have counsel. So just kind of be thinking about what direction you want to go in, and if I could just get direction at a future meeting, that would be very helpful.
Well, if I remember correctly, on behalf of the commission, I think we actually said, yes, do that. And the reasoning behind it is because we felt there was a clear conflict of interest that could have been attached at that time to that particular attorney, okay?
Yeah, we've talked about how.
But that's the way we saw it, and that's the way other people were seeing it. Because our own staff, you as our city attorney, our own staff couldn't go to you and get.
We can't advocate before, and the city attorney's office has not historically, and we cannot advocate for the code board to make a decision one way or another. We are there to advise them on the legal parameters for their decision.
Except that you would also be the one to pursue a lien against somebody or a court case against somebody, and that's where we thought that it was a complete conflict of interest. I'm just not trying to cog the conversation, I'm just trying to bring forward what we talked about.
Yeah, and what you were concerned with. I just didn't want it to be, I didn't want you all to think that we've been operating on. With
not at all.
Kind of a legal conflict. But yes, that was the direction, Mayor, you're absolutely right. But once that becomes effective.
Then we have to pay for attorneys for the code.
Either a private attorney to represent the code board, and it could not be someone from my firm. The rates that you will pay for that are higher than what you would pay, than what the city's contract is with the DOA judge, which it entered into to hear appeals from its civil citation system. So those rates, I think you can expect would be higher, whether that private attorney is representing the code board but yes. So the city would need to determine how it wants to allow for that representation.
Or a special magistrate.
Correct.
But you'd still have to.
Then you'd have.
No, then you're representing our staff before.
The magistrate, correct.
Gotcha. Okay, so maybe what we need to do now is ask Jennifer to meet with the folks that just walked out the door. I wish they would have been sitting here for this.
Sorry, I mean, it wasn't real. I wanted to keep on with the focus, which was all of the good work that has been done since that study. So I didn't want to derail the discussion about this, but I did want to just remind the commission that we need to make a call here, and I want to follow your direction.
I do think it would be appropriate, at least Jennifer, for you to have dialogue with, George, Joey, and Julie. Anybody have other, concerns for them to discuss our feelings.
I'd like for her to circle back to all of us, each one of us.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm going to try to refocus myself on the options and the actions that we need to take.
Right.
But right now, my head's not going to get
Yeah,
there.
right, it's a good reminder.
Yeah,
for all
I
of
can't
us.
get there either, but I will tell you, I absolutely had that concern at that time. And,
Once you get the
And-
input, let us know.
yeah, I had concern, and I think all of us did at that time when it was discussed.
And there are, I just turned and mentioned to the city manager that we can get at least some, information to her about like because Largo has a magistrate. So they have, some, and I can't remember how long it was that they went out for procurement for that, but we can find out, we can kind of get some rates to Jennifer of what those communities are seeing, and not just of rates, but of, maybe, some estimated time, because you're going to get rates, but then it's also driven by, volume. So if we can try to find communities that have similar volume of code cases, we can try to figure out what it is around they're paying for that complimentary service. Because the major shift too in the compensation portion of our contract is that is all covered under the retainer every month. The city has not paid a single dime more for code enforcement.
But you're advising the board, and there's no one advising our staff. That concerns me. That concerns me a lot.
I want to say, so staff does still have training and resources available to it at any point, and if there was a legal situation, as we've talked with them repeatedly, where they felt they wanted representation, the city manager has the authority to be able to get them conflict counsel, and they're aware of that. So we do communicate with them. They are not flying without a parachute, but in that code board setting, in the hearings, I cannot advocate, and I do not consult with them then on how to advocate their cases, because that would be inappropriate. But they have legal tools and resources available to them on how to properly conduct code compliance activities. They have trainings, they have certifications that they receive to be able to serve in those officer positions. So I completely hear your concern, Mayor. I just didn't want the public message to be, oh, they don't have this resource available to them. We are sure that those resources are able to be available to them, but you're right, it's not an ongoing, and it's not us prosecuting before the code board, but the compensation of the prior contract was structured as such to where you were still paying for a lot of things hourly under code compliance, in addition to the retainer. So that has not been the case, and there have been almost, so we couldn't look at the city's, I'm saying that to say we couldn't really look at the city's own past to look at, okay, well, how many hours are we looking at here, because it's all been provided under the retainer, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I saw your finger go up.
Well, I'm just pointing to Jennifer, because I think like you need to advise us on this. I mean, to me, like if the staff feels like they have the tools they need, why would we want to spend more money? So if they don't, then that's why we want to spend more money. So all fingers point to the city manager.
Well, we'll talk too. Wasn't
Right.
meaning to put Jennifer on the spot, but this was a related topic.
Yeah, and I'm not
Some of
either.
the
I'm
only
saying-
times I have all of you together, and I just wanted to make sure we circle back to it and that we close the loop on that as well. That when we put the final bow on everything, we have your system set up in the way that you truly want it
Right.
to going forward.
But the charter, or not the charter, but the
ORC.
The ORC themselves suggested that it be changed as well, because of, they viewed it as a conflict of interest, and we all agreed. I'm just pointing that out to you.
Well, we agree that she can't advise our staff, but if our staff feels like they have enough other avenues to take, then.
No, that's not why.
Okay, I don't remember the full conversation.
Yeah, that's not why.
I'm going back to here.
What they thought the
Right.
conflict is if, I'll use Nikki, but that isn't who was the city attorney at the time. If Nikki is advising the code enforcement board on whatever, and Nikki's also the person collecting from the people that they are fining, that's a conflict of interest.
We need to lay out the situation, lay out the options, and come back and discuss it.
Which is not, which
intelligently, 'cause I
has
don't
not
remember.
been, but that was the
That was why
perception.
they
That
felt-
is not we have never engaged in collection efforts as a firm, so I've not ever had that same scenario, nor do I report to you on collections or anything like that, so.
No, but that was happening at the time.
Well, and I think that's what the concern was, but that's true, that system is not the same anymore, which is one of the reasons why we said first, hey, is this still the direction you want to go in? But understanding that, staff would have more resources within those hearings, we,
Right.
have continued down these discussions. But I want to make sure that when you make that change, and it seems like, oh, just bring the ordinance, and it's a one-word change, but it's one of those things that's going to have a ripple effect. And I want to make sure that you all are prepared and have the tools in place to carry it forward. All right, we'll get back to you.
So, I'll sit down and talk to staff. And I haven't heard from staff about a conflict or that they felt that they didn't have the resources that they need to bring the cases before the Code Enforcement Board. That said, we also need to find the way that is most fiscally sustainable, because you're talking about paying somebody, a separate attorney, one way or another, whether it's special magistrate or it's private counsel. This is not budgeted, it's not, and so on and so forth. And so I need to sit down with staff, talk about the best way to move forward, and then bring it back to the commission.
Well, and it also.
Would you talk with us, can you talk with us first?
Sure.
Before you bring it back to the commission in general?
I can brief all of you on staff's findings, and we can, during our one-on-ones, talk about it. Absolutely.
And I think the other thing too, though, is that we're not having that as many code enforcement
No, we're not.
meetings. So the cost for a special magistrate or counsel may not, and you've got the DOA, so it may not be as much. And I'm not suggesting any one thing, I'm just saying. Anything from you guys before we move? Okay, so you'll come back to us at some point.
I am going to say something. If you're using a different criteria on how you approach it and how you ethically see your position, and you are not in any way as a collection, you have no agency in collection, then maybe we don't have the conflict that was once brought up.
Well, I think that, I wasn't wanting to put the commission on the spot tonight. I just wanted to remind ourselves, I think we've got some good ways that the city manager can go ahead and brief you all on that, but that will ultimately be the decision when you consider that ordinance. So this way, I want the commission to be able to have all the information that it needs. And, and the city manager as well, too, because I'm certainly not one, but that is a thread that remains on my radar to close out for you all and make sure that we follow up on that ORC, suggestion, or recommendation. But to your point, Commissioner, there have been a lot of changes since that time. And some of the ways that our firm functions is a little bit different.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll move on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the time.
Comments, Vice Mayor?
Yes, I have, first of all, I wanted to say I'm sorry I missed the wearable arts. I heard everybody said it was fabulous.
It was.
It was the best ever, and of course I missed it. The second thing, so congratulations to the DFAC. And then the second thing I wanted to do is is really private, and it's a thank you to all of you. When we went to when we went to Florida League of Cities, I had no idea that I would even have been considered to be placed in consideration for the E. Harris Drew Award. Alan was quite sly. He said, well, you need to go because they're going to put something up maybe that says you've served 18 years on the, what do you call it, the Jumbotron. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to tell you that maybe I didn't win the award, but I won the lotto, because the lotto is the kindness, the consideration, the participation of all of you that would even put me up for such a very prestigious award. And you just have to know, the award, it was a lotto. It really was a lotto. And I know Nicole worked on it, Jennifer, you allowed that. You know, I heard several of you spent many hours working on it, and I just want to tell you that.
I thought it was days.
I'm laughing about the
Several
Toronto
days, several
escapades.
days, several days.
about it.
But, you know, I just needed to really thank you all so much, because it was, you know, I think that goes to, someone asked me lately, you know, you seem to have a really collegial commission. And I said, I think we do. You know why? You know, we can disagree. That's okay. But we can disagree, and it's not personal. I mean, there's a big respect on this commission, and you just don't find that. And so, again, I don't know how much, I just don't know how to thank you and how greatly touched I was, and I thank you.
You are more than welcome. And you should have won too, by the way. No offense against.
Yeah, we were ticked about
the
that.
general guy that, I know.
But, you know,
Fisticuffs.
they have a lot of good candidates.
Thank you very much.
I am not going to follow that.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't possibly follow that either, except, Deborah, it's going to be hard without you up here. You're just amazing. You've done a lot for this community, and, yeah, anyway. But other than that, I won't say anything more right now.
That's a nice way to end it.
Okay, I'll be out of town next week, FYI, in case anybody needs me. And I also want to give a big congratulations to Dave Eggers for his continuing to be our representative on the county commission.
He WON.
He did. And I have nothing else, so we are adjourned.
Thank you.